I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 80. Buckle in, because this one is a doozy. Social media-less cousin Ryan returns, and we talk about poli-sci, politics, and government. Now, here's the weird thing about this episode. This episode was recorded almost exactly 1 year ago. So this is before all the COVID, the Black Lives Matter protests, this before all that. We even get in towards the end about who we think is going to win the presidency. I've kind of been sitting on this episode because of how turbulent the world has been. And I'm hoping that now we're getting to hopefully the end. Knock on wood. Or maybe not the end. Maybe just a brighter tomorrow. That it might be worth releasing this. It's a weird thing. I wanted to originally make a joke here at the beginning that it's two idiots talking about politics. But that would be disingenuous. Because Ryan has a degree in political science, and I've been working with my dad and the community at large on politics since I was 11 or 12 years old. So this is two knowledgeable people talking about politics, but we also talk about it in a very frank and honest way. I stand behind everything I say on this. There's one thing I say towards the end that I may get some blowback on, but I stand by it, and I won't say what it is. You'll just have to listen and see. But I stand by this episode. This was a good episode. Also, a lot of me making fun of Ryan, which is always a good time. But if you listen to this episode and feel like you need to correct me or talk to me in person, which is what I'm going to ask you to do, feel free to reach out. Speak at feralgiant.com, and I'll get back to you, and we can talk it out. No sponsor this week. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and if you really want to help, really want to give back, really want to show support, find Black-owned businesses in your community and support them, but don't just support them now and get a pat on the back. Support them in perpetuity. And if you'd like to give any money, go to blacklivesmatter.com and give money there. Find a local chapter and do what you can, no matter what. Thank you again for listening. Without much further ado, here's the episode. How many years were you in college?
Too many.
Oh my God.
UNC, I think I was there for three.
UNC?
UNC Chapel, or Asheville, UNCA.
Okay.
It's part of the
Pull that a little
closer.
There you go. You were at UNC Asheville for how long?
Like 3.5 years. I'm trying to remember. It got a little weird at the end.
My God, Van Wilder, Bert Kreischer.
That's after the couple of years on and off I was at Pellissippi and Roan State, and then a semester at a community college in Asheville.
How many times did you change your major?
Oh.
Jeez. God, I didn't realize these questions were going to be so hard. How are these the hard questions?
Like 3 or 4. I was going to be a theology major originally, so I started with history.
I remember that.
And I was history for a while, and then I took a few world religion classes and a political science class that I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I'll continue with this.
Did you finish reading the Quran?
I did, and the Bible in the same year.
Do you want to read the Torah? I've got the Torah. I've got the Catholic Bible.
I mean, I was about to say, yeah, mine was a Catholic version of the Bible because I wanted the Apocrypha. But
yeah, I dug some of my books out of the basement of all the stuff I read when I was in college. religious texts.
Well, I chose poli sci because I was pretty good at it. I dual majored with literature because I thought poli sci would bore me.
And you've got degrees in both,
Yeah.
bachelor's in both.
Yeah.
What in the hell is political science?
Oh,
There you go. I should have told you to define.
my default answer to this is it's philosophy, but more narrow, which is kind of a joke because that's everything.
Really? So it has nothing to do with politics.
Generally, no. Most
Good Lord.
early
Okay, podcast over.
poli sci students don't necessarily know that, and it is the application of politics most of the time.
The theory of politics.
So political later, if you go into farther, there's political theory and political philosophy. Political theory is usually using some form of statistical analysis to look at what outcomes you hope for, where political philosophy is like, this is just how things should be.
Right.
But in just general political science, this is how things work.
Or how they should work in theory.
Yeah, well, like most of my professors, if they weren't ranting, if someone was like, yeah, but it's really like this way, and their response is, I don't care what way you think it is, like the way it's written is this. And so
Okay.
this is how we function. This is why it takes forever for Congress to pass something to prevent tyrannical rule.
God.
So political science is, most professors will tell you, I don't really care what your political views are. This is how this works. And if you want those political views enacted, you need to cater your statements, your behavior, and your policy proposals in this direction.
Okay. Good God. Okay. I'm going to stand by something I said to you long ago, or not long ago, like months ago, which was, I think it's funny that you went off to college and learned theory of politics or how it should work, whereas I've been working in it since I was in the 7th grade in like local politics. And the funniest part about that is the two of us, neither one of us should never have been set on these pathways
No,
in our family.
Funnily enough, someone reminded me a year or so ago. I'd forgotten. I couldn't vote when John Kerry was running, but I canvassed for him. And
Yeah.
I was 17. And I remember during I think it was like a track and field day. It was something we were outside in the fall. And I had a Carrie Edwards sign, and I ran it up and down my track and then got chased around by a lot of big Southern boys.
Let's call them knuckle draggers.
Yes. And they forcefully took that from me, and I forgot about that.
For the audience at home, Ryan grew up in Halls, and if you ever need to know anything about Halls, when I was in the 8th grade in 1991, there was a cross burning because a black family, God forbid, moved into Halls, and there was a cross burning in 1991.
And my tenure of high school, which was 2001 to 2005, our racial diversity was 99.8% white. We knew the one black guy.
I was going to say, who was the 0.2%?
We had one black guy, probably 5 Hispanic individuals, and 2 Asian individuals.
And one Jewish person.
I don't even think we had a Jewish person.
Whereas on the opposite spectrum, I went to Fulton that when I graduated in 1996 was 2/3 black.
Yeah, Matt.
2/3 black. The funniest part is the rest was mixed up of white, very minimal Hispanic, and even though they're white, I'm still going to call them something different. They're not Mennonites, but there's something like that, to where we had TVs in the classrooms, and they had to walk out of the classrooms when TVs were on. And one of the guys, James, who was a good guy, sat behind me. I just remember being in science class and him having to get up and leave class because we turned a TV on.
That's such a
And that was
strange-
there was actually a strong population because they lived out on Alicebell Road. That church that looks like a warehouse.
Yep.
That's where they went to school.
That's interesting.
Okay. And then the flip side for me, for those who don't know, is my dad, the truck, which I got to remember to tell you a story about your dad that I'm curious if you even know about 9/11 and your father.
I remember one phone call I had with him, my father, on 9/11.
No, this was shortly thereafter. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. What the hell was I saying?
Your father was a truck driver.
My father was a truck driver, but they wanted to build like 67 units with like 300 people coming in and out on that 13 acres right next to them.
Oh.
And Dad was like, the hell you say? And so he got involved with the neighborhood association in like 1989, 1990, and then became president of the neighborhood organization in like 1990, 1991, because he was the young guy in the group, and he has been president ever since. And it's 2019.
That's why.
So when I was in middle school, I always say he's a truck driver because I was like, he's not some hoity-toity political dude. He's a working class blue collar guy, to where your dad, when we were sitting at poker, made a comment and said, out of the three of us, I would never expected you to be the political mover and shaker in this town.
That being said, his older brother calls him the politician.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Now. It took some time for the two of them to get used to that. They're like, wait, what the hell? You have meetings with the mayor? He's like, well, yeah, I need to get shit done. So
that is political science in action. Like most people, day one of any poli-sci, a decent poli-sci program, will say most people most of the time don't care about politics. And they really don't.
Yeah.
They care about the big stuff on the news, and really that doesn't affect their everyday life. If they really cared, they'd be doing what your father did. Or they would be down at City Hall. They'd vote in those types of elections that are local and affect what their roads are going to look like, what their education is.
Partially what Dad would do.
Yes.
He would go to county commission meetings and go, them dumb shit asses don't even know what the hell they're doing. They tried to sell a piece of a building. I don't think he actually said that. That's my term. I love that term. Dumb shit ass. They were trying to sell the building on Gay Street in like 1995 for like $1 million, which now that building is probably worth $20 million, but it's county commission, so they have their head up their ass.
$1 million.
They got all the way through with the vote down to the last vote, and the last person said, wait, which building is it? And then they talked for 30 minutes because they voted on it without knowing which building it was. And he was like, they're a bunch of idiots. He was like, they don't know what the hell they're doing. So before I forget, the story about 9/11 and your dad. So right after 9/11 happened, we were sitting up at Granny's house. It was me and your dad, and Papa was already gone at that point. So it was Granny. I don't even know if Granny was sitting in there. She may have been in the kitchen. She was doing something. And your dad and I were sitting there, and we were talking about what had happened. Because there was a week where I was going to join. From 9/12 to about 9/19. I strongly considered it, and then I realized we're never going to attack the people who actually did this. Big shocker, we didn't. And I said, and Stacy's too young. I can't go off and fight and leave my little sister here. So I decided not to. But I remember having that conversation with your dad. I don't think I've ever told my mom or dad that. I had that conversation with your dad, and he's like, oh, if this shit's still going on when Ryan gets out of high school, I'm moving him to Canada. So you did already know that.
Yeah.
He was like, no, he's at 17, he's moving to Canada.
Yeah.
He was like, he is not going to, he's like, I went through that shit. He's not going through that shit. And it was like, oh my God.
I had to.
You did know that.
Yes. And this is funny. I once begged a friend. She has a doctorate in psychology. She was looking for work. And she's like, the military's hiring for helping soldiers who have psychological problems. And I said, I had to beg her. Luckily, her mother also was like, no. I was like, you do not understand how they are going to work. They're going to expect a tangible result that you cannot give them.
And the stuff they're going to tell you, you will put a gun in your mouth.
Yeah. I was just like, you don't do this. No. I know you will be miserable. And
God.
Luckily.
Okay, so wait, let's go back. So poli sci. Okay, how many years were you in college? Add those up together. Come on,
Let's
you didn't
see.
go to Fulton.
Probably off and on from the time I was 21 or 22 till 20. How old am I now? 28, I think.
Good sweet Jesus.
I moved around. I tried to get residency. That took a year.
I graduated from college at 20.
Well,
I think I graduated. I was in there for 3 years. I graduated. No, I was 21,
and
I graduated in May of 1999.
now I'm looking at going back to get finish that doctorate in political philosophy.
Oh God! But you have to get your master's first, right?
You can get those on the way.
Okay.
So actually, if you're smart,
Jesus.
you'll get accepted into a doctorate program because they'll pay for that. Where if you just go to a master's program, you'll pay for it.
We won't delve too deep into this, but so you're going to be living with Tom for the rest of your
No,
life.
I probably want to get out, and My mother was asked if I wanted to apply to UT. I doubt it. I kind of want to still apply overseas because it'll look better because the market's getting saturated.
Where overseas?
University of Glasgow is the big one.
What's the cost? Although cost of living in Glasgow is pretty high.
It is, but they deal with college a little differently. A lot of things are paid for, as with most PhD programs. But
you're not a resident.
yes, but they offer different stipends and such for that sort of thing. And I know I don't have to take the GRE if I
The hell's the GRE?
it's grad level. I don't even remember what it stands for, but for most grad programs, you have to take this. It's like an LSAT or an MCAT or any of those.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of the ones like, oh, let's see what you did, which I did real great on my writing and pretty good on my vocabulary. And I studied a lot of statistics because that's what all my practice tests were, and went in, and it was geometry, which was
Really?
I hadn't had in about 12 years at that point, and I was like, uh-oh.
Graduate record examinations.
That's
I
it.
can't even say it. So what led you to political science?
Well, so though I did not have family members, my mother was never very political, and my father hated the government in an interesting way. He really hated Republicans. And
we need to go backwards. What year did your dad pass away?
2005.
So I just want to put that in context.
Yeah.
He didn't hate Republicans in 2019.
No.
He hated Republicans in 2005 and before.
And because he always thought they were lying, and he blamed them for most of Vietnam. So
Yeah.
My mother and I used to joke and say, so the way he talks about things, he's such a Republican for mostly being a Democrat. But I
think minus Tom, everyone in our family is pretty independent except for my mom over the last 8 years or so has become more radically left. But before that, she was a centrist just like everybody else. But you got to think also my mom and dad were heavy in unions.
Yeah.
Because of the phone workers and the Teamsters.
Yeah. And when I think of my dad's political views, I would say he was probably the idealized version of a libertarian without being like the political philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be bothered, and he thought a government should take care of people in ways that they need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And so I think it would have been an easy sell to be like, this is why universal health care makes sense. Or
he would be confounded that in 2019 we're still debating legalizing marijuana.
yeah,
Because he would be like, I don't do it. I don't care.
Yeah, which
It's
is
not
what
my
I mean.
thing. Who cares? Like,
yeah, why is this still such an issue?
I have argued this since like 2000, since the run up to the election on 2000, because W was he was going, if I get in there, I'm going to appeal Roe v. Wade. I was like, no, you're not. You make too many campaign dollars saying you're going to do that.
Yep.
Trump is the first Republican of like, holy shit, he may just do it.
He may try. Yep.
Yeah.
And
2020 is going to be.
stalking
So we
him.
may also need to do this a year from now.
Also, this is, this is the day after. It was yesterday they filed articles of impeachment, which is historic. And as a
Did they? I didn't
Yeah.
even. I missed. There's so much of that shit going on. I'm like, tell me when something actually happens.
Yeah. Well,
so
I'll
we
tell you
are.
what's gonna happen.
I will say we are recording this on December 10th, 2019. This may not come out until around New Year's,
Makes sense.
maybe 1st of January. So if anything has happened since then, we
It's
don't
going to
know.
go to the
It
Senate,
won't.
and the Senate's going to quash it.
Yep.
What?
It's never going to go through.
No.
Um, but so what got you into political science?
So that being said, I remember the original W election, and I
Yes.
remember being one of the only kids in my school who didn't like him. Now, I didn't like him because my mother didn't like him, and so yeah,
That's
which is
interesting.
funny to where she's gone now.
In 2019, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, I remember actually even earlier. I remember when I was a very young kid going with her to vote, and she voted for Ross Perot, and so I voted in the kids' election for Ross Perot.
Nice.
Then she did Clinton. I don't know if she voted for Gore, but she did not like Bush, and so I remember getting made fun of a lot by kids, but I actually started paying attention around that time, what certain policy proposals were, what I started taking a little bit more like public affairs classes. And, as much as teachers, a lot of them will try to remain somewhat nonpartisan.
Unbiased, yeah.
There's a few that are very outspoken, and I enjoyed listening to them rant. So that kind of probably put the seed in my brain, but I never thought about it until I was taking a lot of history classes and like history. I was like, I should maybe take some political science. It'll look good. And then I just understood it very well. So I started writing more in that direction.
So here, I'm curious how you'll see this in 2019, and I'll give you my reasoning. So in 1996, 2000, 2004, 2008, I voted for Ralph Nader. 2012, I voted for President Obama. And then 2016, of course, I voted for Trump. Because I'm going to give him another year.
Yeah, but I remember that night. I remember talking and how proud and excited you were.
I begrudgingly voted for Hillary.
Yeah, so did
So
I.
here's the weird thing about all that shit. I honestly believed, because I actually read articles and did a lot of research, that had Nader gotten in, let's say some magical thing happened in 1996 and he got in, he would be the positive version of what Trump's doing. He would have put people in there that were much smarter than him to run the government, and almost making it like what Joe Rogan talks about now, which is it should be a committee of elders. It should not be one person. And that's kind of what Ralph Nader was proposing in 1996. So let me go down the line. So in 2000, Gore turned me off and W turned me off, because W, when he announced that he was running in 99 or 2000, he was sitting on his front lawn in Texas going, oh yeah, I'm going to run. I'm going to win. It's like, you smug piece of shit. But then Gore pulled the Lamar Alexander and put on flannel and was like, I like to summer in Tennessee. And I looked at Dad and I was like, Dad, we don't summer in Tennessee. He's like, nah, screw him. 2004, Kerry was what a fucking, and I hated, although I paid for this, I hated the argument of, you're not voting for Kerry, you're voting against W. I was like, you're an idiot. Like, I can't vote. I can't waste my vote.
Well, they did it again in 2016. You see how well the Democratic Party learned.
So then when President Obama came to be, I just looked at him. I was like, he's a politician, man. I was like, he's saying he's HW. Like, he's saying a bunch of shit to get in there, and he's not going to do any of it. It's like, he's a politician. I was like, I can't throw away my vote. Like, I can't vote in good conscience for that man. And then in 2012, I was like, I have to vote. I hate to say it, 2012 and 2016, I was like, I have to vote for that man, because the other side scares the absolute shit out of me.
Well,
And actually, 2008 should have scared the shit out of me because of Palin.
yeah.
But
I was trying to remember the order. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah. And then it's
2008 was McCain, Palin. 2012 was Romney, Ryan.
yeah.
Which Ryan scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
I know he was a VP, but I was like, but if he gets in there,
Pence should scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh.
fear I
Oh.
the other fear.
I'm about to lay some odds in the Vegas odds I heard today are 60-1 that Pence will be the president in 2020. I was like, I want to put money down on that. I was like, because I feel like I said it before the election in 2016. I still contended that a week before the election, Donald Trump was going to grab his ball and go home.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly thought I'm going to lose this. I would rather be like, screw you and walk away rather than lose it. And he didn't lose it. But yeah, then I voted for Hillary because I don't hate the Clintons. I don't like the Clintons. I think it's
Bill Clinton is probably a rapist.
I
so
think it's Clinton,
you can hate them. It's fine.
the Clintons and Gore. I think I'm biased towards them because they're Southern, but they're Southern in air quotes, and that bugs the shit out of me.
Well, I just want you to know that because you voted for Nader in 2000, I blame you for everything else that happened.
That's okay.
uh,
That's okay.
Actually, 2008, I voted for Obama. It was the first time I could vote, and I liked the mobilization. Like, it was, I hoped it would go down ballot.
Again. Here's my argument. I'm in marketing and PR is one thing I do. The marketing, design, and PR of it all is like, this is all
for sure.
Smoke and mirrors.
But if it mobilizes at the top, usually people will go and just vote straight down ballot. As far as Hillary, I thought that was the dumbest. In fact, I had this conversation with a conservative friend of mine in 2014.
Yeah.
I said, every sign says the Democrats will waltz right back into the White House unless they run Hillary Clinton. And
Yeah.
I was like, and they'd be real stupid to do that.
Yeah.
And I watched them do it. And then I thought, as soon as it looked like she was going to be the main one, I thought, oh, the Republicans are making a big blunder. They're running Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's going to give us a chance. And I remember sitting for 2.5 hours that night when he won and just staring at nothing.
So I publicly called it January 1st, 2016. I was sitting with my buddy Jason out this farm. We were smoking cigars. I sat there and I was like, Donald Trump's going to win this election. Like, I had been thinking that for a while. I was like, he's going to win this election because I was watching him dismantle the Republican side and seeing how he was doing. I was like, Hillary can't go against this. I was like, the best bet is to run Bernie.
Yeah.
I was like, that's because Bernie and Trump, and I kept contending. I was like, I want to watch that. And then Pointner and I bet a cigar. I said, but we ended up washing out because I said, I think Trump will win. I think Trump will win. And Sean was like, there's no way in hell he's going to win. And then I said, revised it like 2 months later. I was like, I think he'll drop out like a week or two before the election. And then Pence will be in there and Hillary will be Pence. So we revised it to where if that happened, so we ended up doing a wash. I think we did end up buying each other a cigar. But
Sounds like you needed to buy each other whiskey.
yeah. Oh, we did that. No, the funniest was, and I'm going to pull a Hulk quote, and you're going to see where I'm going with this. Like 2 days after the election, I was sitting up on the deck with Sean and like 3 other people that are all hashtag liberal, hashtag woke, hashtag all that bullshit. I don't think any of them will be listening to this. Maybe one of them. I hope not. I'm not picking on you. Here's my point. They were honestly flabbergasted. Like, oh my God, what are we going to do? They just kept that 1,000-yard stare. What are we going to do? Oh my God. And I looked at him. I was like, get angry. You should have already been angry. You should have already been involved, dumbass. It's like, if you really didn't want him in there, you should have been out fighting. I was like, I've been angry since I was like in the 6th grade. You got to get angry and realize Dad's whole view was local politics are where it's at. National, they don't give a shit about any of us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's funny.
That's true.
Yeah,
I was like,
and I was just like, I've been angry since I was like in the 6th or 7th grade about this shit, and I've been acted since. Stop crying. Start working.
Yeah.
I said, I looked at him. I was like, your job, right now, you need to leave hanging out. Put down your whiskey. None of them else smoke cigars. So I was like, put down your whiskey and start working to get that dumbass out of the office. I was like, don't sit here and cry because you're not doing a damn thing. Like, I went off on him. I was like, shut up. Shut up. Also, I want to go, who's going to be the next mayor in Knoxville? None of you know because none of you give a shit. I think, here's Jody's opinion, and Ryan is chomping at the bit to talk, but I'm on my soapbox. I think if you don't vote 3 times in a row, you should have to take the citizenship exam again. And I'm not talking about presidential. I'm saying everything. I think it also should be a national holiday, or government should. Here's big government idea though. I think if somebody wants to take off for 2 hours to early vote, 4 hours, however long it takes, I think the government should pay back the employer for that. Or the employer should give it as a floating time off. Like, no matter what, you get time off to vote, but you have to bring in a receipt that you voted.
You need automatic registration. It should be auto.
Yep.
It should be on the weekend. It should probably be a week long.
Yep.
There's no reason to really do it. And it should be a national holiday. I mean a true national holiday, not one of these like just the government offices closed. No, everyone can have a day off. I say this all the time. It bothers me that people go in on Thanksgiving at 4 PM to work. I'm like, just let people have some time off.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. Here's the other thing. I think we should do an evaluation process to let some felons vote.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think it's so dumb.
In fact, if you serve your time, what are you doing if not proving to society that you have paid your penance? Why can't you vote?
There are people getting out of prison. I almost said graduating prison. Getting out of prison that are more educated than probably 50% of this country. And I'm not slagging on this country. It's not this country's fault. It's the government's fault for our education system being dog shit.
But yet again, what do we vote? What do we vote for? You know,
he's going to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Well, that's what I remind people all the time. You know, I love the Lewis Black quote about people talk about the government as if it's some building that walks around and just kicks over other buildings. And he goes, that's not it. The government is us. Yep. The reason it sucks is we suck.
Keep going.
But as far as, yes, felons should have it. As soon as you move, when you do your change of address, it should be automatic registration. There's no real reason for it to be as rushed as it is. We've lost a lot of civics classes and public administration, so people don't really understand what the government does. They don't understand why the government's so slow. You have a slow government, initially the idea being it prevents tyranny.
Yeah.
Like back and forth. You don't want Congress willy-nilly on the whims of some event to pass a law that isn't well thought out. Not that they don't do that, ideally.
But I also believe, like, when I was in like the 7th grade, I got taught how to fill out the 1040 EZ form. Mm-hmm. Why in the hell we're not teaching kids in high school? Like I've said forever, because I'm in the creative world, I was like, every kid who goes to college right now, a requirement should be business classes.
Sure. The real question you should ask, though, is why are we filling out a 1040 EZ form? The government could do our taxes for us.
Now you're turned into Alex Jones.
Yeah, well.
Why the hell are we having to fill a 1040 EZ?
But the question being is that is a moneyed interest that keeps that going. It's people like TurboTax and Intuit, which may be the same thing. I don't know who owns who anymore. But they're the ones who keep those types of files and requirements. H&R Block, any of those are moneyed to keep those types of forms up. Other countries don't fill out taxes like this. The government sends you a thing and says, you owe this much money or we owe you this. You sign it and send it back.
No, it's because what you'll notice if you ever do your taxes, if you do it, you don't find as much money as if you have a tax professional do it.
True. That's also true. And so, hey, it's worth the $50 to $100 they'll charge you if it's a simple tax for you to come on in because you'll make a few more bucks. But there's so many, like there's a lot of small problems that I feel like a rational society should deal with. Like, we should get rid of the penny, and we should probably get rid of daylight savings time.
The
But
penny I struggle with because I think because credit cards and debit cards are such a big thing, which people don't even know what the hell debit cards are now, but because those are such a big thing now, people don't have as much understanding of money.
that's fair.
So that's, and I'm not saying the penny, but I'm worried that it's a slippery slope into also getting rid of cash or change or something to where everything is card based.
The penny is at least it's an easy sell. It costs more to make a penny than it's worth. But as far as money becoming card based, I mean, if the way I always look at that is if the system falls that would devalue the paper side, it's going to devalue the card side. It would even maybe devalue the gold side. And seeing
Okay.
as our money isn't even representative of a full amount of gold,
Yeah.
like I kind of, the digital aspect of it, it's one of those things I'm like, it's going to happen one way or another in the long run. We should I would love for us to start talking about things that are important 30 years from now, so we are not hit by them blindsided in a silly, pointless system that never seems to end. Like some of the questions I watch people ask about the way the internet works and how out of touch the people who make any law in reference to it is
It's all a series
mind-boggling.
of tubes.
Yeah, or it's all, or what is net neutrality? I don't know, but it sounds like some government overreach, so we should get rid of it. There are questions. We have kids that have infinite access to the internet in ways where they can communicate with anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
And no one really thinks about that on a policy level, what that means. Like,
Why would you? Well, you don't understand it. So,
yeah. And
And
or it creeps you out, things about kids
or
getting
you
in
think
trouble.
it's a fad. You're probably
Yeah.
the same people who thought rap would go away.
Yeah, but I mean, kids getting in trouble for essentially conducting their 14-year-old relationships over a phone, and no one wants to talk about that because it grosses them out.
Yep.
And I'm like, so what? We ruin 2 14-year-olds' lives because of some
Oh, yeah.
stupid things they do?
Oh yeah.
Like, I was like, and this was happening. This was obviously going to happen. Why did we not pause as a society and say, hey, this is something we could talk about for an afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Well, my kid would never do that. Yeah, sure it wouldn't, Jim Bob. But it's
Uh.
no,
Yeah. Now I'm starting to wonder. Like, good God, we're going on a dark path.
of what our policies should be, of what our like.
So here's one. I have a question that whether or not I'm sure they discuss this in school. Excuse me. Is the Constitution a living, breathing document?
So that's more of a philosophical aspect. It obviously is. It's written to be amended. The first thing they did was amend it 10 times. Oh, you're going to argue against me here?
We gotta have our guns.
No.
It said we need to have our. I need to stop doing
In-
this. I need
in
to stop
order
doing the
of-
Southern accent. When
In
I-
order, I was about to say someone who doesn't like people
I
calling
know,
Southern
I
idiots. In order
I'm around
for a
too-
well-regulated militia, you're absolutely right. You need your guns. Which they'll argue, that's not what the Supreme Court argues, as if you couldn't write a new amendment one way or another. I mostly stay out of the gun debate because I think most things should be somewhat common sense. And the fact that as soon as the CDC can't even do research on gun violence in this country seems non-commonsensical to me.
Welcome to our lobbying world.
Yes. But even small things. I mean, we have an amendment that got rid of alcohol and then 2 amendments later brought it back. Like,
Yeah. What? Yeah. Also, think about the fact that when the Constitution was written, black people were 2/3 of a person.
three-fifths.
3/5 of a person.
3/5
I knew.
compromise.
I knew I wasn't far off.
Yes, and women couldn't vote. All of those things have had to be added, which is pretty rich for a document that's supposed to be all of us are created equal. Though,
yeah.
When we talk about our founding fathers who were slave owners and were rowdy and often drunk, like
For the most part, weren't really Christian.
no, a lot of them theists. I mean, let me think. My history on this is a little weak, but I think Adams was fairly devout in certain ways, but Jefferson definitely wasn't. Jefferson was a slave owner who sat around smoking pot and wrote a version of the Bible for himself where he took out every miracle to see if Jesus's actions still held meaning, if there was no mysticism.
Well, and I think Franklin was one of those on paper, yes. Off paper, he was a philandering,
He slept with all of Europe. So,
Yes.
and I'm not making that up,
Syphilitic,
all of Europe.
which is funny. Out of all of them, him,
He's,
because W was,
He was also an older-
or W, because Washington was like what 6'2" at a time when that was. I still love the thing where it's like, you know why he got elected? Because he was like 6'2".
it's like, because everyone saw him standing tower.
I read a really good book, and I can't remember what was. Well, it was an okay book. I'll take that. It was talking about the first battle that Washington was involved in as a, what was he at that point? A lieutenant or something? And it was called like the Bloody something. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. But it was an interesting book in that it was essentially positioned him as a fuck up. But
I think
as a rich kid, like West Point appointee almost, fuck up. But the funniest part was that the author absolutely loved him. So he kissed his ass throughout the entire book. I was like, you're an idiot. Like, you're writing this book essentially showing that he's not the brightest bulb in the factory, and he's a rich kid that never had to work for anything. And
I mean, there are many reasons why that war was successful. Part of it was distance. Part of it is we just decided, I think smartly, to not play by the rules of war. They met each other on a battlefield and shot at one another, and we went, we're going to hide in the trees.
Have we even stole how to fight from the Native Americans?
Yes. Like, why would we go point guns at one another when we could hide in the trees and shoot them? Turns out that should not be that revolutionary, but
No.
that's what helps us out. Plus the distance. Plus we're just a general colony at the height of an empire. Well,
Yeah.
shortly before the height of an empire. And, there was a quote I once read about a girl in a history museum in America. She was visiting her friend who was American, and she was British. And she came in and came right back out, and she goes, "Oh my God, did you know we used to own you?" And I was like, of course they probably don't talk about it much, not because they lost, because they owned the world.
Yeah.
It's like what use is one colony, even if it goes on to flourish? India's pretty big now. Hong Kong's pretty big.
Oh, God.
Like,
This is going to drive me nuts where I can't remember what that book was called. I'm going to find that while we're... I don't even know where
but to go back to your original
I don't even know where to start.
question, is the Constitution a living, breathing document? I think it's Jefferson that said that the Constitution should be rewritten once a generation, and I
remember
probably
that.
agree with that more than anything,
Okay.
because times change. And a modern, I don't know if every generation, but probably every 100 years would be a little better. Every centennial that a country exists.
So the thing that scares me about that is how do we find the people who are going to do that?
That's true. And ideally, we'd be voting for your...
Because you also got to think about, like, right now.
Yeah, what if we were writing a new one right now?
Well, I think about, like, Supreme Court nominees. Like, what if we...
Well,
like, we would be screwed.
so as with an actual amendment, you need state ratification. I think
Okay.
that's what, 2/3, I believe. You have to have the states ratify an amendment. And so hopefully you would end up it still would take.
Here's where
time.
your theory, where I'm just like,
Yeah. Well, our system, I don't think was built to maintain a populace of hundreds of million. So they just didn't foresee that. And I think you could tweak it, but you'd have to be willing to look at it and change it. Even the states don't even have standardized ways they handle national elections, local elections, laws. Like, not that necessarily laws should have to be completely standard across state lines, but for instance, if Hillary wins 49% of the vote and Trump wins 51, all 11 electors are going to go to Trump. There are a couple of states in this country that it's proportional. It would have been 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And that's how is that not standard in 2019? Like, I don't care which one you want to choose one.
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing because somebody did a map. I think it was actually in 2012 of like how everything played out. And like almost all of the United States, minus the places you would expect, like some place in the South, California, like 80% California, and some of the Northeast, it was all purple.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's kind of insane that we're actually not red or blue, we're all purple.
Well, we were established, and our mythology is these independent, loving revolutionaries who were breaking away from a giant government tyranny for their own freedom. So that I get annoyed with most people who identify like as an actual libertarian because they usually mean economically, and in libertarian economic ideas is very selfish and usually doesn't work in a broad scheme. But the libertarian ideal of the independent individual that doesn't want to be messed with by anyone and just wants to go into the frontier and live his life and just be his own person, that is our mythology. That is who we are. I mean, look at Westerns.
Yeah.
That is why the Western maintain, whether or not it was real or not, that the cowboy is who we are as a people.
Yeah.
The cowboy, or
there's part of me that understands the mindset of the libertarian, but it's also so extreme to where I'm like, okay, cool, you can be a libertarian, but here's the thing. The minute your car tires touch the road, you need to start paying.
And that's
if your house catches on fire, you're going to pay for that.
Yep.
Like every single aspect that they don't. It's so funny. Like I've heard 8,000 people make this comment of saying, if people who bitch and complain and call this country socialist and say, well, we can't all have health care, that would make us socialists. It's like, but we all have fire, police, roads, bridges, tunnels. We have all that stuff, but it's the one thing.
And they would want to pay a middleman for their health care. So they want.
Yes.
What I always say, I have a lot of people who complain, well, I don't want to pay my taxes to go to this one thing. And I always say, well, I don't want my taxes to go for drone strikes. They're going to murder little Arabic children.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to change that, I needed to vote for it. Taxes go into one giant pile, and then those people we elect divvy it up.
Yep.
And, so a lot of that goes for things I don't want. I would rather we go to education, because I think that's the most important thing for a populace, is it to be educated.
Yeah.
But our education system keeps dropping every year.
Well, that's what kills me about the whole healthcare thing. The whole point of universal healthcare was because if somebody goes to the emergency room, you cannot turn them down.
Yeah.
And they were saying that was costing the government an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
So they did that. They said, actually, if we paid for insurance for everybody, we would actually be doing better than if we had to pay for emergency costs. and why I don't hear the Democrats and everybody else say that. That literally 2 sentences.
Yeah.
That 2 sentences.
It's, well,
Well, it's a whole thing about abortion too, and everything else. It's like
there are certain people who are so ingrained that they will take a negative against themselves if they think someone will have it worse. And as much as I hate to say that about certain of the society, the way I think if you pushed it to them like that, they probably wouldn't agree with that. But the choices they make, if you start to push them down the like logical, which is mostly going back to poli-sci, since that's what we were, what it is. It's philosophy and the idea of you got to follow the logic. Okay, if this does this, then that means this, which means this, which is your end goal.
right.
And so, okay, you don't want health care because you don't want to pay for someone else's issue, but you're okay with paying into a giant pool of money to a company that will pay out for that issue.
Yeah.
Or you don't, I mean, like you said, you talked about police and fire. Look at roads. You're paying in so you can all drive. What's the overall negative? That someone may be cheap and not pay as much? Sure. But as a societal whole, it'll make you better. Like everyone, a healthier society, they can work more or they can live a better life. They can do something where they're not burdened by hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical debt.
Well, and that's also the argument for universal basic income.
So
of like it makes sense. I don't know where the money would come from. I don't know. And everybody's like, well, people are just going to hang out and sit at their house all day. I was like,
Okay.
no, they won't.
So
Also, who cares?
yeah, that's what people need to stop. Like most of the people who say that are these libertarian types who don't want to do anything. And I'm like, my response to them whenever they're like, they're going to be lazy. I'm like, would you be lazy?
Yeah.
Like, because if you wouldn't be lazy, what makes you think that they would? And if you would be, why do you care?
Yeah.
Like just ask yourself, like,
Yeah.
either way, what's it matter? And as far as money, I mean, we just made it up. So like, where would it come from? The real thing is you would need things like rent control, food prices controlled. And so I think about UBI and I think it's going to be important. Like I look at a future where, especially due to capitalism, the most capitalism is cruel as it can
automation.
be. Yeah, it tends to be fairly logical. And you know what's logical? A machine that doesn't break down is always, or breaks down very rarely, is faster than a human, always shows up to work, doesn't complain. So all those low income jobs that are mechanical, gone. That's fast food, service industry. Like
warehouses.
Yeah,
Think
warehouses.
about the Amazon warehouses where they have that automation. But the bigger thing is like weird little things you don't think of. They don't have to run lights.
Yeah.
So their utility bills go down.
Yeah.
Like they
you don't need AC because the machine, as long as you keep it at a certain level,
Yeah, you need a minimum
of AC. But same with heat, they can work in a lot colder conditions.
Oh yeah, also but also like Amazon hasn't paid taxes
in forever. But the point is all of these, if they can automate it, they will, because it makes sense.
Yes.
So what does that mean for people? Will say, well, with those new advancements, like new things come about and jobs get created. And I think that has been true. But this is the first time in history we're looking at actively replacing, not to come up with a new technology that will send, unless we got into space, like it's not a new technology that's going to revolutionize things in some new way that'll allow us to do more. It's one that's specifically designed to replace. And that's millions to hundreds of millions out of work. What do you do with those people?
You know, one of the biggest ones that a lot of people are not talking about is truck drivers. And I don't know if I think about that more because of Dad.
I actually thought about it today.
But it's like the big thing for those who don't know is they're using essentially drone technology to where if a truck needs to go from Portland, Maine, to use where your sister's at, to San Diego, California. Back in the day, it would be one driver. They can only drive a maximum amount of X hours a day, and they have to have Y hours off. So let's say it's 12 and 12. But if you treat it like a drone and you have these people in Las Vegas driving these things, then it can go however long it takes. And that's still someone employed.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of more people employed
for a time until
for a time. But
driverless
then
cars.
driverless cars, it's going to get to a point to where even those people aren't needed.
Yeah.
You'll have one person managing 20. You'll still have to have, because they're interacting with the public, you'll still have to have.
There is a political science idea with this. It's called post-capitalism. It's the idea. So
Is that like post-metal or post-punk?
yeah, well, so Marx, as much as he's a dirty word for a lot of people, Marx said that capitalism was the first step in a communist revolution. But if you didn't stick and go into socialism, go into communism, and design your society around it, capitalism is going to basically make itself so efficient that it won't need the human aspect.
Yeah.
Um,
The Matrix.
and so, what do you do then? And so, post-capitalism
Or wait,
is a type of political philosophy that's focusing on like, what do we do next? How do we not have people getting their heads cut off because people are hungry in the streets because
Not-
we didn't account for this?
Not The Matrix, more like Idiocracy or Wall-E
Well, so that's the other thing. What do we do?
or Mad Max.
I-
You're positioning Mad Max as our future.
Well, I talk about I am curious about the sort of not just like money. What else are we going to do as a people? I would like to think we'd have more time to do, more art and entertainment. But do I think people will? And I'm not so sure. I think a lot of people use their job to derive purpose, and I think a disease really in this country. But this idea that what we do as something that brings an income and allows us to live is who we are is philosophically damaging when we're looking for meaning later.
Here's where I'm going to argue with you later. Argue with you because of the industry I'm in and because of the things I'm seeing. I think there's a lot of people like dad. I'll use dad and mom as an example. You know what that is? That's I'm on this train for 30 years so I can retire. There are those people to where they would come home and not care. Dad would coach sports on the weekends and stuff. Like his job was just something to make money.
Which is what I think people should go
But
for.
here's where I'm going to argue with you on that. So you got a poor black kid in East Knoxville with a single mom, and he's got 4 brothers and sisters. If that kid wants to become a graphic designer, he's not going to be able to become a graphic designer.
Absolutely true.
And I know this for a fact because I actually know a kid over here that he got a girl pregnant, and now he's working at Denso. And I love his mom and dad, and I hope they're not listening to this. But he was a very talented designer, but he couldn't do that. He had a baby to take care of, which is exactly the situation his mom and dad were in with him. Like, I was working at Taco Bell with his mom and dad who were like 22 and 19 and had a baby.
And so
I think it's a little cyclical and a little perpetual.
For sure. But I mean, and the answer is then that's a society thing. Like even having a baby, first off, you should have the sex ed and the capabilities to not have those babies. But even if they did, society probably should help take care of that to where you could still make a journey.
Oh yeah, the amount of people I knew that had 2 or 3 jobs to be able to try and go to school and get a nursing degree so they wouldn't be making minimum wage was insane. But I also say the push and pull of it all. There's also how many kids are very talented writers or artists or whatever because they grew up in an environment that was the only way they were going to get out.
Yeah. And I guess that's fair, but and maybe it's because art has always been kind of a part of the bourgeois. Like trying, I mean, I guess I feel bad about the talented artists trying to get out, but I think a society that is taking care of its people that maybe relieves that burden and doesn't inspire, a young Anthony Bourdain who's writing in the kitchens because he just needs to do something else or
because he has to take that job.
Yeah. Like that's all right. Like we don't have to necessarily be these artists, but I do think we define ourselves so much by even if like your parents, you said they're on a 30-year train just to make sure they get home and retire.
Well, and to make sure kind of that Stacy and I were taken care of.
Yeah, but what are they? What are they outside of that 30-year? Like if you were to ask them, like that's a large chunk of their life, and and it's definitely part of who they are. And I don't know if the fact that we're selling ourselves, the way I tell people all the time when they're looking at their job is, if you want, when you're working yourself 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week, remember what you're doing is selling your time. You have a finite amount of time and you are selling that.
Why are you pointing right at me?
I don't know. I'm
It's
pointing
probably
at, I'm
because I
pointing at
told
every,
you that I've been working 100-hour weeks.
yeah, but you are selling your time. You have a finite amount of time. Is if that's who you want to be, you're more than welcome to. But expecting that of everyone else
No.
is, I think
I
a
do that
sickness.
because I actually love what I do, and I care. Well, that's like, here, I'll go back. I'm kind of, so here's a little behind the scenes for any listener. There's an event I'm supposed to go to tonight at 6 o'clock. It's being debated on whether or not it's going to be canceled because of snow, that I can barely see a dusting out there. But some people are coming from Farragut, and there's a person on Instagram who does not follow anything on Facebook. So I'm also trying to communicate to them, hey, don't show up if this thing's canceled. So there's a little behind the scenes on what goes on during these things. And also, if it gets canceled, we'll just sit here and continue to talk.
6 hours later.
So I'm sorry. I got lucky in that I found what I wanted to do when I was 13.
Would you do it if UBI became a thing and your price for this is dramatically less? Would you do it? Would you still graphic design for things, passion projects, we'll say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally, okay, so my world is I do work for a basement waterproofing company that will never see the light of day on any of my social media, on my website or anything, to help fund me doing stupid stickers and shit for myself.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm going to look at my mailbox real quick, so you keep going. So yes, I would. I think there are... I hate to use keep using Joe Rogan as an example, but he's like, I guarantee you there are people out there that are like, I always want to learn how to do pottery, but I never, and it's something they would be passionate about it. And that's why I go back to I think anybody in college should take business classes, because that person can then go, holy shit, I really enjoy doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm really good at this, and I can make a living doing this, and I don't have to cancel stamps at the post office.
Actually, really quick aside, post office should probably also do banking and a couple other. It's pretty great.
Oh, event got postponed.
Oh, good.
Keep going.
I was about to say, it's a pretty great government ran industry that we kind of take for granted. I do realize there's a lot of annoyances with the post office, especially this time of year.
Here's something I'll add. It's also interesting in going with the capitalism aspect that you see stuff like stamps.com. Mm-hmm. That's not really taking money out of the post office. It's actually benefiting the post office, but I don't know that the post office sees it that way. I think they see it as competition, which is what's it called? Medieval thinking.
Well, the lower individual trying to get the idea of the grand is hard in most situations. But going back to your idea about pottery, I think you're right, but we're working ourselves to death in this country. Yeah, it's not what it was 150 years ago, but 40 hours a week when you're driving and commuting over an hour a day or more, you're tired. We wonder why our health and our weight fluctuates so much. People come home and they're exhausted. They sit around and watch TV and they pass out. They get up and do it again.
So in the corporate worlds now, it's kind of expected that you eat lunch at your desk because you need to keep working.
Not 9 to 5 isn't a thing. Like that old idea of we're working 9 to 5. No, it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, because you may get your hour for lunch, but you're not getting paid for it. So you're still.
That was another big problem, trying to get my parents to understand that, because they were on the 30 and out program, mm-hmm. and because You know, Dad was a truck driver, but there were also 40 other people that worked there.
Yeah.
And Mom, same thing. So when I worked at like the print shop, you know, I was working 70, 80 hours a week. Now then, if you'd asked me, would I still come into the print shop and do that? Hell no.
Yeah.
But I think it's a difference of I do what I do now. I do it for myself. They never understood that. They're like, but you don't feel well today. You should stay home. I was like, if I don't go in, the presses don't run.
Yeah.
And the shop does not run if I'm not there. And I love them to death. I still don't think I had that conversation with Mom one time. I was like, you do realize I'm really good at what I do. She was like, you need to shut up. You're not. I was like, no, literally I'm award-winning, raised. I've literally can account for probably close to $500 million at this point. Because you think of all the products I sold at PetSafe,
Yeah.
all the newspaper stuff. You start adding stuff up, all the fundraising I've done for nonprofits. How much fundraising have I done? It's like, I'm kind of important. I was like, but I don't talk about it, but it's when you're like, oh, you're just, making little doodles. No. Like,
but I mean, like, well, people have always had an issue with the art. And
it's
understand
also, I started this in 1992. It's 2019. I've been doing this a really long time.
But-
I've been doing this almost as long as you've been alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that choosing beggar aspect about like, I'm not paying you that much for art. It's just an art. Just puts a pencil on a paper. What people don't understand is they're paying for, the 20 years of experience that allowed me to do it in 10 minutes as opposed to me just doing it in the minutes to an hour that it may
I think
take
that's
me.
the Van Gogh thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that story about him being in a restaurant? I'm trying to remember. I'm going to tell this story wrong, but it's something akin to. He was in a restaurant. They came and asked him. Somebody just came up and asked him, like, "Can you just do a little doodle for me?" So he did a little doodle and he handed it to me. He's like, "That'll be $40,000." And they were like, "Yeah, but it took you no time." And he's like, "It took me no time to do that.
Yeah.
It took me 50 years to be able to do that."
Yeah.
He's like, "You're paying for those 50 years."
Yeah, and I mean, like, it comes down to, I still worry about mass changes, even the lovely socialist that I am. I worry about mass changes in a quick way because I do think people do bad if they don't have meaning, and I think we need to discuss what meaning means.
Okay.
in society. As for what we're doing, governmentally, everything is so overwhelming all of the time. So as he said, his friend with Denso, should he have to work at Denso at a job that probably does not have an end because he won't retire from there because they'll automate or they'll go out of business. So what's his future look like? Probably service industry if he can get it, if that's not automated in 20 years. I would say I hope he can save, but if he's having kids and he falls into the same cycle that so many others do, probably won't save that much. He probably can't afford a house.
No.
No one's affording houses much anymore. Because those keep going while wages stagnate. In fact, every year that they don't raise wages and you don't get a raise, you make less than the year you did before. So that becomes cyclical, as you said. So he may have a kid that will be stuck in the same situation. I don't think he would go to Denso again if we were taking care of him as a society.
No.
Yeah. But to change everything, you need to change education. You need to not be afraid to talk about sex in like a real way. This is what sex is. Here's access to birth control. Don't have a kid at 16. Not as a judgment. Don't have one because you're not prepared.
Well,
it's not some, like, I'm pointing at a 16-year-old for having that. When I see a 16-year-old have kids, I see a society that is failing those kids. Like, your education should be funded. You said he was a black kid, so we have a history where we have never made up for slavery. I mean,
Yeah.
we worry about reparations, and you can't even get people to understand that after slavery ended, and then you had mass discrimination throughout the next century, and then they wonder why they're like, well, everything's equal now. Nothing in the law says that it should be, though arguably, but nothing in the law says that they should be separate. Yeah, people can't just fix all the past, and the past is real. It still lives with us.
Right.
So everything in society is overwhelming because most of it's connected. And I guess that's going back to why I have issues
you
with
just keep pointing at me.
why I have issues with libertarianism is this idea that it's not. Like that everything they do has some repercussion down the line, especially in a society that has 330 million people, or arguably 7 billion because it's global.
Well, and the problem you have with a lot of like libertarian people is a lot of them preach the whole bootstraps mentality,
Which was a joke.
But the problem with the bootstraps mentality for most of them are people who were lower middle class, upper class, and they're like, well, they should just pull them up by their bootstraps. It's like, their parents didn't pay for their college. Also, when you went to college as a 50-year-old, it was probably like $200 a year, and you were bitching about $200 a year to go to UT. Whereas now, it's probably like $8,600 a semester.
Yeah. And also, as a quick aside, that bootstrap scenario was actually a joke.
Was it really?
Yeah, because have you ever tried to pick yourself up by your bootstraps? You can't do it.
Oh.
That was the...
I never did
but
the
it got,
literal
just
version.
like the game Monopoly has been destroyed from its original meaning. Like Monopoly was to show you how predatory it's an easy land ownership can be
Okay.
if you start buying it up. It was, I think, designed by a woman to show people that, and now it's
sexist.
and now they've got one that's they had one that I really want, but it's like Monopoly for socialists, and the tagline was winnings for capitalists, which I thought's really funny.
That's pretty good.
Like I was like, I just kind of want a copy of it because I think it's really funny.
That's art right there.
Yes.
That may not be a banana duct taped to a wall, but God, the memes that have come out of that.
know.
My friend Amanda at WVLT, former,
Which
she duct taped a remote control, and she took a photo of herself next to it like, I made art. And I was like, oh my God.
What's funny is I think there's a good argument to be made that the fact that this many people are talking about it, mocking it, there's articles being written on it, that's the point of that art piece. Like how ridiculous and stupid it is. The fact that this many people get agitated about it and are out there, there's
you have to leave my house. Dude, I get so angry about art because I think a lot of art could not exist on its... Yeah, I keep finding little...
Well, he dead now.
I think they're trying to come in out of the cold.
Okay, fair enough.
I honestly, I think it's because Ryan just killed a little fruit fly or something.
But there's no fruit around here, so.
What's weird is I think we went from being cold to being warm, and a lot of them...
We're like, oh, it's spring now.
Yeah, we're unfroze, and now that it's cold, they're all jumping.
So,
But I will say... I think there's a lot of art that cannot exist on its own. It needs 5 paragraphs next to it to explain.
Sure.
And like something like that, if you saw that thing up on the wall in like the CAT bus terminal, you'd be like, some crazy homeless person did that. And you may even take an Instagram photo of it and say, is this art, as a joke, which is your point.
Yeah.
But if not, you would just take it down and throw it away.
That's true. But the fact that, a lot of it is probably a good sleazy salesman being like, you should put this in your art museum.
So I've got two friends of mine that they yell at me, and they misinterpret. God, I love you, Michelle and Kim, but you misinterpret what I say. They will not acknowledge that there is a marketing, a PR, or a critic snobbery to make stuff
For sure.
But no, they won't accept that. No, they're saying right now, if you took a crayon and drew one line on a sheet of paper, your art is equal to Pablo Picasso's art.
Well,
and I'm like, no, because it doesn't mean anything to you. You made no effort. You don't care. For me.
But if it did mean something to me, like it may be as important to me as an individual, but I would say to look at like big business art and not think that there's a PR aspect of it and playing that game
Yeah.
is
Well, that's
silly.
like, have you delved into, although a lot of artists and stuff roll their eyes at him, at Banksy.
yeah.
Have you seen Exit Through the Gift Shop?
So, no, they
So
documentary.
you need to. Here's a homework assignment. Now I'm pointing at you. Homework assignment for you. Watch Exit Through the Gift Shop, because it talks about crass commercialism and mass production in art, which is fascinating. And then there's a new one that came out like last year called Saving Banksy. And it's essentially like he creates, or they, or whatever.
Whatever they.
Do you know who Banksy actually is?
Actually, Asheville had a Banksy wall.
Did they
And-
really?
Yeah, and then someone painted over it because that's what that wall was for.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who didn't like get that got mad about. They're like, "That was a Banksy," and they're like, "No, that's what that wall's for. It
Yeah.
gets a different artist comes in
Yep.
and paints over it. That's what they do."
So there's a lot, like there's some dude that Banksy
Pretty sure.
painted on his garage, on the wall to his garage, and then some rich person came in there and bought it and then sold it for 10 times as
Of course
much.
they did. Yeah.
And it's just like, this art is not meant to be saved.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like,
why. I mean, isn't it obvious when he had the piece in the museum that as soon as the guy bought it, they shredded it?
but the funnier part is they said it's actually
Probably worth more.
It's
because
it's worth more because it got hung up.
Yeah.
It did not intend to get hung up. It meant to actually shred all the way through. But because it hung up, it's,
Yeah, and but I mean, like even that action of itself, that moment of shredding, I think there's your meaning
Yeah.
in that art. If
I think I still remember I had an argument with my buddy Greg. We were in college and Britney Spears had just come out. And she said, "Well, you know what I try to do as an artist." And I said, "She needs to shut up. She's not an artist." And he and I got into an hour-long debate on whether or not Britney Spears was an artist. We are idiots. But my argument was she has a choreographer who creates all of her dance moves for her. She has a stylist that creates the outfits she wears. She has makeup artists. She has hair people. She has PR. She has. She doesn't play any instruments,
Yeah.
so she has other people create music. She doesn't write songs, so she has. She is literally not an artist. Like she may funnel all those artists into the fact that she's an attractive woman or attractive girl at that
I
point.
guess-
Because I think she was 16. I was like, but she's not an artist. Like she's not creating anything. She is maybe a curator.
but then like, would you argue like an engineer or someone is an artist when they're just drawing a plan for like let's do whatever engineer came up with the Tesla truck. You know, that looks like a
See, my argument is, I think a lot of too many people say I'm an artist when it's like, well, they're a chef, and it's like, well, with my art, I was like, can you not just be a chef? Like, because I'm like, I feel like the term artist is getting diluted because there are literally people that are like look what we're doing right now. I could literally say, well, with my art. About podcasts, I was like, no, it's just two idiots having a conversation.
But I mean, or maybe we could just say whatever people want to call art, they can just be artists. Who cares?
I think it just bugs me because I see. Here, I'll show you an example. People at home will have to Google this shit. Here's why I get angry at shit like this.
I like Behind the Bastards, the podcast. They put up their pictures on the website. So
I'm not going to do that. So here's where I get angry. Oh, wait, here we go. So, thank you for Google Images. So see that above?
yes,
So, when Wyeth did that piece, Christina's World, do you know the backstory behind that?
no,
It's like his sister-in-law or something that she had polio and she cannot move her legs. So there's a story right there.
Mhm.
If you look at the actual piece, the paint is built up almost like it's a sculpture. You know who's more respected? This guy. When this guy, they said, oh, it's a massive blow to the art world that this guy did. This guy's name is Cy Twombly. And I was in Philly with my friend Michelle, God love her, and Sarah, this woman Sarah. So we walked past, and there was this beautiful, lush landscape. And Michelle went, ugh, that's a couch painting. That looks like shit. I was like, do you know how talented that person was? The technical detail on that is amazing. She was like, yeah, but it's boring. It doesn't mean anything. Then we walked into a room that was nothing but Cy Twombly pieces that actually looked worse than this. It looked like a 3-year-old had gone crazy on the walls. And she was like, now this is art. I want to go, you're high. You're high.
But
because this is the guy didn't have to try. He didn't have to get good at what he did.
But obviously, if it speaks to her, it's as far
Then
as
she's
art,
nuts.
maybe, but shouldn't all experience be part of that? You talked about the story with that painting, but I look at it and I do think.
But
it's
on
so
the
good.
flip side, I can not tell you those stories. That's still a beautiful piece of art.
So that's the question. Like, if society fell and someone were just to unearth it, how would people respond to certain pieces?
I think people would wad up Cy Twombly's shit and say a 3-year-old did that.
Possibly.
Whereas that, they would be like, this seems important.
Though it could, so go into that
Oh,
society.
God, here we go.
Say humans got removed off the planet and aliens came and Cy Twombly shit because of PR and how he is being put in a museum. So people are looking at society and they went, well, they obviously cared about this. Why? That discussion may be part of what makes that art.
I think for me, and this is what I've never been able to get Michelle and Kim to understand. I grew up in a very blue-collar household.
Yes, you did.
That's been very established. That is not the first piece that Andrew Wyeth ever did. That took years of work and talent and getting better at his craft. Cy Twombly, that took none of that.
So I guess the question then would be like, say I was taking photos with my phone and I'm not a photographer.
Yeah.
And I just happened to take a great photo.
Yeah.
Like no, no training, nothing along those lines. Would that still be an art piece?
I think it's the difference in photography and painting.
Okay.
Because you are not going to just be able to sit down and do a painting that is seen the world over as without
Right.
marketing, PR, or some critic being like, well, you know what he's trying to say with this art. And it's like, yeah. So I'll tell you this funny story. I was in New York. I was at the Met. And, what's it called when you do stuff even though you get angry about it? What's that phrase? There's a phrase for that.
Do stuff because even though you
Yeah.
agree.
You're like, I'm going to watch this football game even though it makes me angry and they're going to lose. I can't remember what that's called. Like, it's called being an idiot.
Masochism. Yeah.
Yes, a sadomasochist. I go to art museums every town I'm in. I was
Just
in.
to yell at them.
I was in. Oh no, you're gonna love this, especially considering who it was. A lot of times you go to art museums, the people who work security and stuff are usually poor and black people, or they're persons of color, which I find fascinating. I'm like, I would love to do a series of photos of somebody in a velour, or whatever that material, that crappy material that will burst into flames. A poor black person that's a security person at an art museum next to somebody in like a $5,000 coat. That's art. That's art. They're around this shit all day, and if they hadn't got this job, they may never get to experience this. Anyway, so I'm in the Met. I turn a corner and I look at a piece. And out of the corner of my eye, out of the periphery, I see a woman fall forward, almost like putting her head between her knees. And I turned and looked at her, and it was a 50-year-old black woman. And she came up to me, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she's like, honey, that face you made is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I said, what? And she was like, that look of anger and disgust, or whatever she said, was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I was like, ma'am, I've been doing art since I was in 7th grade. I don't know what the hell that is. And I pointed. You know what I pointed to?
What?
It was a piece of art with one dot right in the middle on a blank canvas. And then I turned around another corner, and there was a blank canvas with a slash in it. So the slash paintings, there's one with 3 that sold for like $47 million. That makes me want to blow this world up. That's the end of the world.
See, because it doesn't, that really doesn't bother me all that much. You know, I guess I think back.
I think it's a difference of I'm in the art, creating art, and I'm frustrated that I'm not better than what I am, even though I try really hard.
But you know, I think about the lady a couple of years ago who tried to fix that Jesus painting.
Oh my God.
And she made a monkey Jesus. I think about that because throughout history, that type of painting exists. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of them.
Of the original Jesus painting.
Yeah, well, just of any type of kind of Renaissance era painting, people, it was fairly common because there wasn't a lot to do. And so that painting would have gone on affecting a few people every year. Now as a society, we stopped and laughed, talked about, had an experience with that painting because of her behavior. That action feels like a type of art. Whether or not it is like, and it took her nothing, though I guess she did claim to have some history of training, but we saw what she did to that painting.
Yeah, she did not
You
have
know,
a history
and
of training.
but that moment caused some reaction for society. And it's in our consciousness now. That painting would have probably never been talked about by more than 100 people at any
That's
given.
fair. It's still... Well, that's like... I was in San Francisco at their Museum of Modern Art, and there was... This is another thing that I always hold up as an example of what makes me... I literally almost ripped this thing off the... If I knew I wouldn't get arrested...
I would love to have the phone call from jail of you being arrested for destroying art in an art museum.
So there's a photographer I really love, Walker Evans.
Okay.
So, because you actually tried to do an example and you gave a bad example.
Okay.
Of your... So Walker Evans, he did a book with James Agee called Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, where they got paid by the WPA.
Okay.
Which brings us back around to government. Should government fund art? We'll get back. Ho. So they did this where they went through during the Dust Bowl. They went in the South, the very poor South, and James Agee, Knoxville, and they wrote, and they won like Pulitzers and stuff for this. And Walker Evans did these portraiture of these people. So I'm standing in this Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. There's a Walker Evans piece in front of me. It's like, that's amazing. You know, I've seen very few Walker Evans pieces in person. Thing about photography is that's a print. That's probably like 1 of 40, but that's still his piece. Like he approved that. That means something to me. Take one step to the left. Exact same photo. I'm like, what's going on?
Did someone take a picture of that in the picture?
They took his picture like in a book or something. I'm gonna do a aggravated version or a egregious for whatever. I can't find the word because I'm so angry. They went to Walgreens, had a copy made, and then his had like 4 sentences describing this. That one had 4 paragraphs about, well, what is the value of art? You can just make and I was like, I'm going to rip this off the wall and burn it because I'm going to piss on it first because I'm so angry because Walker Evans was a master at his craft and worked really hard to do that well. That person took no effort and they're seen as equal to him. I'm like, I will kill everyone in here. I was so angry.
But the question then goes like, so look at your uncle. What would he see as art? And
a red hat.
Yeah, for sure. But, like probably if you were to take it down the work in a engine, some combustion engine, he'd probably look into that. And no one, that was probably mass designed by a robot at that point. The actual designer was one guy, but the actual product was, a robot bending tubes and pipes and melding it together. So what is going down to what is art then? Like I look at a combustion engine and see a mass-produced piece of metal that's been done.
I can see the original piece as being art. What that person drew on schematics and had to do 8,000 things. And also taking the wealth of their experience to know how to do all that. Look at the Toyota Yaris engine.
Mhm.
That tiny little engine in that tiny little space, and it still works.
Yeah. But I mean, like, but going into that, then you had to have the guy that also designed.
Also, as a graphic designer,
Mhm.
seeing like the logos and the typefaces and how those were chosen, I can see that as art.
Yeah, because Toyota has all the Toyota written in their symbol. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, because you can spell out. So it's got the T. You can get a Y. You can get the O
Oh
used
my
twice.
God, I
Yeah.
never thought about
It's just
that.
Toyota. Yeah.
That's smart. See, that's a graphic designer selling a bill. That's getting an extra $400,000 right there.
And not
Yeah.
only is it simple and recognizable, it spells your name.
Yeah, it's like the arrow in the FedEx logo.
Yep.
So, do you know about the WPA?
I don't know. I know the NEA, the National Endowment of the Arts.
Well, the WPA, I'm trying to think if it was in the 30s. WPA.
Should they pay for art?
Works Progress Administration.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like art related. I had the A as an art, and I was like,
No.
Should the government pay for art? I would say yes, because a lot of times you would then the art would definitely become a staple of the bourgeois. like sometimes finding those little stipend, that $100 that they're going to throw you, allows you to buy a canvas and some paint.
Yeah.
You know, I have this idea. Will you fund it?
Wow, this is crazy. So this thing was from 1935 to 1943. Look at this gorgeous logo.
That is that era.
That is amazing. I've never seen this logo. As much
It's
as
got
I've
it
read,
all in there. WPA, you can see it.
yeah. God, it's just. I'm gonna download this. I want a print of that or something. That's amazing. Okay, sorry. Keep going. So, do you think it should fund art?
Yeah, because like I said, as with the government's there to help even the
Right.
least of society, and as with education and why college should be accessible and free, especially at least on the undergrad level. If you don't, it just becomes the money classes that will do it. You
Yeah.
will have a few breakouts who can somehow scrap together and do some art. Actually, you would see it probably see more graffiti. Like,
Well, no, that's a big thing now is murals.
yeah,
Like the cities or if you go down like St. Petersburg, Florida, or even here in Knoxville, like murals are a big thing, and the government is paying for those. I think a lot of people out in the world don't know that their taxes are to fund that, but it makes.
But would you rather them, yet again, as I always say, would you rather a kid, go spray paint a building in the middle of the night, or would you like to give him a place to do it where he can spend his time, he's not going to be harassed? Or would you like your money to go pay for a drone or a gun that's going to kill somebody?
Yeah.
You ask, where does money come from things? Society doesn't have to pay. There's a lot of money. We pay a lot for our military. We pay a lot for a lot of businesses that basically exist just to fund the military.
Yeah.
That they build different vehicles and weapons that never get used. Not because they're not useful. It's because there's literally too many of them, and then they just store them.
Well, no, it's the
That's-
It's the tanks thing out in
Or some don't even work.
New Mexico. We signed a 20-year contract with them. How much would it cost to buy out that contract so we don't have to do that anymore?
Or even
Well, then you're going to destroy jobs. I was like, no, they need to figure
so
out how to do
then
something.
what is the government doing?
Yeah.
It's basically paying.
Yeah.
It's basically paying to keep people in jobs.
Yeah.
So
And you're bitching about-
and they are wasting resources and building things that are never going to be used, may not work, just to have something to do.
And you're bitching about universal basic income.
Okay. Yeah. So what's the difference? Could give the Aaron Sorkin answer.
Closer. So what is the Aaron Sorkin answer about?
I think it's best expressed in the newsroom, where at the beginning he's like, in the NEA you should get rid of it because sure, it's only like pennies on the dollar, but like he points at the Republican after this and says he gets to hit it with you every election.
He gets to what?
hit it at you every election. Oh, you're paying for this thing where people get to put a tube up their butt and spray paint on a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every
See, but my argument to that would be then the Democrats need to start hitting back at them about them using abortion as a way to fundraise.
yeah. Also, like
That needs to be a drinking game. How many times I bring that up?
abortion. My mother's really gotten concerned about that lately.
Well, here's okay. Then that leads down this dark and desolate path. Okay. Republicans.
Are we sure we've recorded?
Yep.
Okay.
See, I never stop, so I see.
I figured
gap.
there's
I
this
see
big gap. I was like, maybe he's picked all this up, but
There's a little behind the scenes for people listening. So the Republicans I have, the ones that are so pro-life, they're pro-life. Don't want to do gun control. Yeah, that's a minor thing. But the other problem I have is the minute that baby is born, they do not give a shit about that baby.
Yep.
That really bothers me. I was like, stop using your Christian morals to use that as an excuse for your political beliefs when you don't actually follow through on those Christian morals.
so
Onward, Christians.
what I would always say is what a very peculiar God they have that is supposed to be omniscient, but thus would know that whether or not a soul would be aborted or not, it
Right.
would still waste said soul. Now you can morally say that it is death and that person should not do it, but if you actually think that God is then wasting souls on something it knows is never to exist, that's an interesting God you have.
That's more of like an Old Testament God, not
Yeah.
so much a
Some-
New Testament.
the New
God.
Testament. Even that, like, what a waste. What a weird function. I mean, I would assume if the soul exists, it takes some form of creativity to make it happen. Why just be like, well, here's one that's going to disappear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the abortion issue is so weird to me because it's. I was looking up something.
I mean, I get
I'm curious if my numbers are still right, but it's weird that a bunch of rich old white dudes are like, you shouldn't get an abortion. It's like you don't have an opinion. Like,
Well, I get, like, to an extent, if you do believe it is death and like a murder
Yeah.
and trying to stop a murder, I can understand that. I don't think really the science backs that up. Like,
Well, and it's
cell
also-
clumps.
it doesn't matter in the case of rape or incest, or
Yeah.
if you know the baby's going to be born deformed and
brain dead, or it could kill the mother. Yeah, I think all of those. I can get it on a moral fundamental level if that's what they try to rationalize, that it is all types of murder. But I think you can't function like that, and there's rarely any consistency in their other views that stick with it. You should also care about that baby being healthy throughout its life, having health care, having the chance to
Yeah.
become a graphic designer.
to succeed in life, to
Like-
pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Yeah.
There, I didn't do the Southern accent that
That
time.
time. Yeah,
Well, but it's also like the whole shoot. What was I going to go into? Like the birth control, or yeah, because you're not educating the kids. Like it's a weird. I'm going to do something that will not work well on a podcast, but you'll understand what I'm saying. When you cross your arms, you go,
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Go, no, it's murder.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so you don't want to hear anything else. No, it's murder. Didn't do a Southern accent there either.
But you've got, I guess with overall with abortion, it seems,
But you're okay with the death penalty.
yeah, like you've got, I would also argue that they're not going to stop happening. It's
No.
one of those things we always, as with everything about, I'm looking at a future and I'm like, they've always happened and they will continue. And maybe you don't like it. The old, like, well, then don't get married if you don't like
Yeah. That's
gay
what I
marriage.
was going to go into. Yes.
And but if you really don't like it, and you can think those people are going to hell, but they're going to happen. And I would rather someone not trip and fall down stairs trying to get rid of it
Yeah.
or stick things up themselves to try
Yeah.
to get rid of it. I would much rather something sterile and safe. And I would also, and this one no one talks about, I don't think a child should be seen as a punishment. You know,
No.
if you force someone to have a child, they may love that child, but they may very well not.
Yeah.
Because it was forced upon them.
Yeah.
And we talk about adoption and people giving up. The amount of babies adopted in this country versus the amount of babies aborted, the numbers are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Maybe 100,000 adoptions a year, in the millions for abortion. So
Yeah.
1 year, we got an abundance of new babies.
We already have a problem with population control as it is. Well, and it's the same thing with the gay marriage. Oh, well, no, I'll do this number. So I don't know if this number is correct anymore, but I remember when Trump first got into office and they were talking about Planned Parenthood and trying to get rid of Planned Parenthood. And it was like, the number I looked up was, and I'm probably going to misquote this because I always get these two numbers wrong. It's like 0.05% of the national budget goes to Planned Parenthood.
That probably sounds about right.
0.3% of people who go to Planned Parenthood get an abortion.
Yeah.
And Congress has made it to where not one federal dollar goes to paying for the abortion. So literally, the Republicans have one.
Yeah.
Because no government money is being spent on abortion.
Yep.
But why you don't hear the Democrats say that is stupid.
And the opposite side is also ridiculous. These are the same people who then don't want sex education in school.
But it's hard for me. It's hard for me to listen to people who want to cut down the deficit and cut down our spending by saying we need to get rid of Planned Parenthood. It's like, okay, but the Department of Defense and Homeland Security are like 56% of the budget.
Yep.
And you're complaining about 0.05% of the budget. You are high.
Yeah.
You're high. You're nuts. Like, why any Democrat doesn't say, did you fail at math or are you just stupid? Like, there's part of me that wants to run as a Democrat and just say shit like that.
Well,
I would get nailed because they would look through my records of how many things I have borrowed from the internet and be like, that's like a lot of terabytes of data.
the big issue is like, well, I really don't like both parties are the same, because if you're that kind of individual, you're not paying any attention. But
Well, it's all team sports now.
Yes, but it's also, you have, and I also hate this like derision towards the media, as if it's out there like trying to gotcha either side. No, the media cares about moneyed interests, and whatever's moneyed is going to get the most out there. I mean, a good example is look at current Bernie Sanders. Most reports on Bernie omit him. They will talk about, he could be first or second place somewhere. They won't talk about him.
Yeah.
Like even PBS recently ran a thing, didn't talk about Bernie Sanders at all.
Huh.
As if he was not in the top three. And
He's two.
yeah, for
two.
most things.
Yeah.
And our top runner is Joe Biden. How in 2019 you could be this
Rambling Joe Biden.
toad death?
Yeah.
Like the thing is like when Joe Biden is up there, and if he is the candidate, Trump can look at him and talk about how creepy he is with women, and it'll work.
Yeah.
Trump is
Which is
100 times
crazy.
worse, and it will
Which
work.
is crazy. Because Trump he has paid for prostitutes
Yeah.
and he has been inappropriate with women, but Joe is the one that's the creepy.
Trump's Vietnam was surviving STDs.
So we'll get back into the gay married thing, but you just said Trump and Vietnam. Here's the problem I have with a lot of people that support Trump. I think 5 years before he announced he was running for office, if you took somebody in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, who's a diehard Trump supporter, 5 years before he announced he was running for office, said, "Hey, would you like to have Donald Trump over for dinner?" They would say no. They would say not only no, they would say hell no.
That gross Yankee, New Yorker,
Yes.
elite.
But now that he's president, he's their best buddy.
Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. Like,
Oh God, who said that?
I don't know, but it's true.
Yeah.
And Democrats didn't fall in love with Hillary because of course they didn't.
no.
And every Republican, Trump called Ted Cruz's
Yeah.
wife a dog
Yeah,
and said his father killed JFK.
yeah, yeah.
And Ted Cruz is now batting for Trump.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's Lindsey Graham. One of the funniest
Lindsey
interviews I've ever seen on the Daily Show.
Was-
Like a week before, Lindsey Graham was on there, and he was like, "We're screwed."
yeah.
And then they played
Because Lindsey Graham said, you have to vote for Ted Cruz. Like, this was before he got picked, and
Yeah.
Cruz was still there. And John said, you said,
No, it was Trevor Noah.
was it Trevor at that point?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would made sense. But it was, you said that if you killed Ted Cruz on the floor, that no one would convict you
Yeah.
because he's that disliked. And he goes, yeah, I did. You have to vote for Ted Cruz.
yeah.
And now look at Lindsey Graham all over
Bootlicker.
Donald Trump,
Yeah,
baby.
bootlicker. That is, I still go back to the. Now this is just crazy, Alex Jones type talking. Maybe this is good for the nation in that, Trump is literally eliminating one by one all these awful people in the Republican Party because they're all getting convicted or they're all quitting. Like Paul Ryan. Have you heard that name in the last 6 months?
I wish I could get rid of Mitch McConnell. If I were given a teleportation power once a day, I would just teleport in front of Mitch McConnell, smack him, and then teleport away, preferably while he was sitting on the toilet.
Mitch McConnell's the one guy.
Currently him and William Barr. Those are two of your most dangerous individuals.
Mitch McConnell's, I think, the one guy that if I was ever in front of him, I would have a hard time not beating the ever-loving shit out of him.
He would just go into his turtle shell and be protected.
But I think the only problem is I would like for Anonymous or somebody to go back and doctor my records that said I voted Republican my entire
Yes,
life.
yes.
To where they can't point. It's like, well, he's a Hillary supporter. He's a Hillary supporter.
Hillary.
But yeah,
You
it's
know,
like
for-
that's the only one
reason.
thing that stops me from
But
doing it.
that's the other thing.
Although I will say, there is a strong chance, and I'll say this here to my 3 listeners. Actually, I have a lot more than 3 listeners, but Tim Burchett, who is now a Trump bootlicker, if I ever see him, I will look at him and say, "You're an embarrassment to your father." And that's all I'm going to say. I was like, "You're an I'm just going to look at him and say, "Your father's looking down and he is so disappointed in you."
Spinning.
It's like he is so disappointed in you that you would lick the boot heels of Donald Trump. It's like he is so because I know that would enrage him. And he follows me on Twitter. I've felt like tweeting that to him every single day. But I will do that. I will do that because I also feel like he thinks he's a big badass dude and he's a lot smaller than me.
Well,
And it's just, that's one of those, I was like, no, I will be willing to go to jail for this because he's such a turncoat bootlicker.
well, that's what.
We got to get back to gay marriage. Keep going.
But that's what we go on about. You talked about it being kind of a team sport, and there is
Oh,
some
it
of
is.
that. But the difference I see in Democrats and Republicans is when if it were to come out and when they're like Hillary should go to prison, and if you look at a Democrat and they made an argument like she did this, this, and this, the Democrat will go, yeah, she could go to prison. She should go to prison.
Yeah.
Like I stated earlier, go back and look at Bill Clinton. He's probably a rapist, and that should get out, and he should be besmirched for that. Like,
Yeah.
fuck you, Bill Clinton's a rapist. And so Democrats are willing to be like, no, that broke the law. That broke what we established.
Yeah.
That person should also be punished. Where Trump's right. He could go shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and
Yeah.
his supporters would not convict him.
Yeah.
There's
I listened to an episode of Larry Wilmore today, and he had. Well, I'm backlogged, so I was actually listening to 3 in a row. And one of them was this guy who wrote a book, who essentially said a lot of this Russian stuff actually started with him marrying with him and Ivanka in the early '80s. Like that, Ivanka's dad was actually someone who reported back to the Ukrainian government about Trump and what he'd do, about his real tax numbers. And stuff when Trump was like, I got I got billions of dollars. They're like, he's got $100 million. Like all this stuff, like her father, Ivanka? No.
His original wife,
What? Ivana.
Ivana. Yeah,
Wait.
that was his original.
No.
Man,
Because they both have very similar names. One of them's the daughter and one of them's the mom.
yeah.
I think Ivana is the daughter. And Ivanka, God, we sound really stupid. Ivana is the mom.
Mom. Yeah, I was going to say, I think Ivanka's the daughter.
Ivanka's the daughter.
And what's
But
her-
yeah, that they were saying.
Melania. I was like, what's the other name? But yeah, well, this wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's whether or not it exists, the fact that there's stories of a P tape, like with him having one, like that. Even that idea may be a meme, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Knowing his tastes, the biggest thing is some people talk about him being a germaphobe because he tends to wipe his hands, but he tends to do that to people of lower class when he does that, not the rich.
See, here's another drinking game. Every time I mention Rogan's name, Rogan thinks he's on this diet pill that's essentially speed. And that's how he's able to, even though all he eats is KFC and McDonald's.
It's called cocaine. And that's why he's
Oh.
all the time.
Cocaine. It's like Fin.
Yeah.
Like it's that. He was like, he never sleeps. He has these erratic hours. He'll be up at 3:30 in the morning tweeting.
Well, he does.
And he eats crap. He drinks Diet Cokes. He never drinks water.
How his heart doesn't explode is, he doesn't understand, one, how the government works at all.
No.
It's obvious. He thinks a humanitarian effort requires a give and take. You can find them still, but he used to have YouTube videos where he talked about like what he would do if he was president before he ran. And one of his big ones was, we should go give humanitarian aid and then just take their oil because they'll be so happy to give it to us, because that's what humanitarianism
He's
is.
an idiot. But he, there was something. Who was it? There was some crisis that happened when Clinton was in office that I recently read about. How he was like, well, you need to let me go over there and negotiate for this. It's like Saudi Arabia or somebody. And he was just like, they're like, no.
No, it wasn't it. It was the reporter that got captured,
Yes.
wasn't
yes.
it? Yes.
That's who it was.
Yeah. I think it was
that-
Korea.
no, it was Iraq.
Was it Iraq?
It was Iraq. It was a guy who had stepped in when Saddam was about to invade Kuwait, and there was a reporter that got. I think that was what
Yeah.
It wasn't the Korean thing. It was a different thing because
I remember him
earlier.
talking about at some point trying to go negotiate for a
because
reporter.
he's a great negotiator.
To be honest, they probably should have let him go because maybe we wouldn't have the problem today. But
So that's the weird thing. So like up to about 6 months after he got elected, all this people, you talk about Democrats self-correcting, and there were all these people that was like, you know what? He is actually a really smart guy. I was like, no, he's not. No, he's not. If he was a smart guy, we would all be screwed right now. It's like, but they're like, he's a good marketing person. I was like, no, he's not. No. He's just a bully.
And he sells cheap. The statement of him being of like he is a poor person's idea of a rich person is spot on.
That's the rap community. Is that?
Yeah.
He's name checked in so many rap songs because he flosses. I keep joking that Barron, Ivanka, Don Jr., and what's the other son's name? Eric. You realize they're all anchor babies, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, her parents basically got over here with chain migration.
Yeah. I think Tiffany Trump's the only one. Tiffany was by Marla Maples.
Yeah.
I think she's the only daughter, which you never hear about her.
Yep. As far as, it's just upsetting because I have to sit around and in my family, my mother's side in particular, doesn't really like him, but like a Republican, they fall in line. And so they'll keep him.
Well, what kills me is how many Republicans are like, well, he's a good Christian man.
Yeah, I don't think my mother would argue that.
Yeah.
But they'll keep him. And it's more the snide comments that he is way like the evidence for him doing it, and then their snide comments towards Democrats. And I'm like, well, there's a big propaganda network in this country to promote that. You know, like whenever I have to argue something with a lot of people, the editorials and the links to specific same, news sources always are what come back to me. And I realize, because I always ask, like, well, maybe I'm just stuck in my own echo chamber. One of the nice things about not having social media, it's hard to really get into those. And I recognize that most of my sources tend to be all over the place.
Reddit.
Yeah. Well, Reddit at least is a news aggregation, but Reddit lands very heavily left. So the nice thing about Reddit is if someone posts any crazy headline, usually the first comment is like, this is horseshit and here's why.
Yeah.
And here's a link to that. And then if that guy's an idiot, there'll be a guy under him saying, no, you moron, that headline is correct and here's why. And so I at least get some back and forth. The amount of times my mother will say something to me and I'm like, that's not what's being shown. This is what the actual research shows. And she has never heard that. There was something about immigration. I argued with her earlier this year where I said, these are the actual numbers. And she's like, where are you getting that? And I pulled up the actual government figures where I'm like, this is the report. And she goes, you mean Obama's government? And I was like, how do I have that conversation now? I was like, so you think Obama orchestrated the government? Everyone there.
You're saying that name wrong. It's Obama.
Obama.
Well, hell no.
You mean
You'll get shot if you say Obama.
that Muslim that we once had?
The Kenyan guy.
The Kenyan Muslim. Like, but like she's like, I don't know how to respond to those sorts of things. I'm like, I don't care what you believe. When I talk about climate change with these people, how it's even a discussion, I was like, okay, so we do adopt these climate changing aspects, and it's a lie. It's some big government conspiracy. You're right. So I was like, so the world's cleaner? I was like, I don't know why you support jobs that are finite. Like fossil fuel will go away. We can use that all up. When new green jobs are jobs, they're new jobs that are here. I was like, why do you choose one over the other?
I joked with Sean, about him saying he was going to save coal. And I told Sean, I was like, give me a percentage. How much do you think of the nation's job are actually coal jobs? And he was like, oh, it's next to nothing. Like, it's so small. Like, you got to think how big of a percentage of people working actually work in coal. I bet it's in the thousands.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be so minute. And
it's a bad, hard job that kills you.
But it's the messed up part about that is you have someone in the middle of, I'm going to pick on somewhere else. You have someone in the middle of, in Nebraska, that coal is never going to be there. And they're like, I'm voting for Trump because he's bringing back them coal jobs. Like, does not help you in the least.
Yeah.
Aren't you about the individual? Doesn't help you in the least.
But I mean, we have giant deserts we could cake with solar panels.
Yep.
Personal windmills, personal subsidized. I don't mean giant ones. Yes, I do think the left has an issue with nuclear energy that they should get it under control. It is a much better step. But ultimately, where things are going, you could skip it. Like, the solar is really positive outlook, but it takes money and it takes a government focus.
Yeah.
The question I have is, why choose one that is a dying industry over another one just because of essentially a team sport? And when I tell
it's because of lobbyists.
Yes.
You have lobbyists, instead of having one massive lobbyist
But for
fighting global climate change and saying, we don't, exactly what you just said, we don't need to endorse one, we need to figure out what works best in what region.
Yeah.
And figure out a way. Like, they say a lot of problems with solar panels is, you can do it in Arizona, but how do you get that
energy
resource?
Elsewhere. But I mean, we are a country that dumping a lot of money fixes a lot of problems if we need to. And I don't see a bigger problem than climate change. But as I look
to me, I think education
is a big one. But education can be spread out.
I take that back.
If it is actually as dramatic as it's going to be.
I'm gonna disagree with myself for a second. Education is our number one problem in the United States of America. climate change is our bigger problem as
Globally.
Earth as a whole.
Yeah, because I don't want to die in the climate wars.
Yeah.
But when I look
See,
at
I think I'll do okay in a Mad Max world.
yes, but when I look at my
Hold on, I'm gonna knock on wood when I say that.
when I look at my Republican friends, I'm like, and you want to know if I were a business Republican, you know who's not going to want to deal with Saudi Arabia and fossil fuels? China. And if China spearheads green energy and becomes the leading force of it, they're the superpower. If I were a Republican who is rah-rah America and American economy, I'd be shaking in my boots with that aspect hanging over them. So I was like, you want to beat China. You want to be the country that's like, no, come to us and buy it from us.
Yeah.
Like that's an easy no-brainer.
And China's, once they develop that, they're going to have carte blanche and they can charge whatever the hell they want.
Yeah. Well, they'd probably be building it anyway, but
I'm still going to, so since I'm going to go back to the Mad Max thing, there was a guy I used to work with, diehard gun guy. And I couldn't get him to just admit that he just liked guns. He was like, no, Second Amendment. I have the right to bear arms. What if the government comes after me? So I worked with him for 5 years. And I kept talking to him and trying different angles. And finally, about year 4, I was like, okay, because he's 6'2", maybe 6'3", big old beer belly, even though he doesn't drink beer. Big old schlubby dude. Probably couldn't run 50 yards without having a massive heart attack. I think I can run 50 yards. Anyway, he was like, and what if the apocalypse happens? You know, I got to be, you know, you ain't going to have no guns. You don't have anything to do. And so what I said was, dude, this was back when Kmart was still down here. I was like, dude, I am half a mile from a Kmart. If shit starts popping off, I'm going to walk to that Kmart and take every gun and everything. And I'm also massive and will take every gun and every bullet. And I was like, I was like, dude, I have thought about this. I have a deck that I will rip up the boards so they can't get in the house, and I will bar I have a basement that I could close all the windows off and you could never see that I was living in the like I went through all this stuff. He was like, you've really thought about this? I was like, yeah, no shit. And I was like, that's great that you have a stockpile of guns. I was like, the government wants your guns. You're not going to be able to find them. Because the person who's going to take you out is going to be a sniper from a mile away.
or a drone driver from across the
I was
country.
like, you can't fight that. You keep acting like the government is going to be the British and going to walk up your driveway and smack you in the face with a glove and be like, I declare. No. And at that point, he was like, all right, I just really like guns. I was like, that's all I was asking for.
And not only are they going to do that, the reason they have the ability to do that and so much funding to do that is because the same people that vote for them.
Yeah.
They're worried about tyrannical government overreach, and then they give them the ability to do it.
Well, it's
out of fear.
the gun thing is weird.
So
Like him or even some of those guys I worked with, they were engineers, that were richer white dudes. All I would say to them was, you got to think about where I grew up. Where I grew up with, we had 108 people graduate with us. 2/3 dead, in prison, or have done time. A lot of those deaths were due to guns. Why do you think I wouldn't like guns? You dum-dums. And they're like, well, that's a fair point. I was like, yeah, it wasn't Pa taking me out into the field to shoot. It was drive-bys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so this a broader going back to political science. There's a no.
taking me
So
off
this
my-
actually.
You're form tackling me off my soapbox.
Well, it's actually sort of, if you start thinking of, so this was actually not taught to me in school, but recently in a YouTube video I was actually watching, and they framed the difference between leftist thought and conservative thought. And the way they put it, once I started looking at things like this, it's totally spot on, which is that even if you go back and read like Burke and original conservative theory, they think hierarchical. So they have a picture of society and how it's supposed to be, and they want to maintain that. And they believe that there are big fish and little fish, and there are people that are supposed to fit in certain areas of society. Now, they are raised in a society that also has a message of freedom and egalitarian, so that's in their message. But if you ask them how society is supposed to be, there are people who are above and below, and leftist thought goes more egalitarian They think people should have a more level playing field. And if you start looking at their policies and how they want to maintain things, that's where it falls. So the government, libertarianism kind of messes with this, but libertarianism isn't classic conservative thought.
Right.
But what they do, maintaining, I want to keep my guns because I'm supposed to be where I am in society, and those people are going to come from me for me. And so this maintains me. So
literally, those people are better than you.
yeah, possibly. And so, but a lot of times,
No.
No. But think about
it's the people who are going to come from the government with their guns. They shoot guns every day.
Yeah.
They're going to be better.
But
it's a whole argument about arming.
But it's also
it's an argument about arming teachers.
The real reason is less about the government coming for their guns and more about the black
poor.
guy on the street,
Poor.
the
Yeah.
poor in general, but usually like who's the boogeyman in these people's scenario. And it's because that's where those people are supposed to be. Why, when they argue against gay marriage, since we're going to get back to it,
Yeah.
it's
Because I'm going to give you an ironic twist on what you're talking
so
about.
gay marriage, they'll argue that they're getting more rights. And that's changing how society's supposed to be. This class was never this way, and now they're getting a new right.
Yeah.
That's more rights than me, and I am higher than them. If you start recognizing that they do think in hierarchies, it starts to make more sense. You can even guess where they're going.
But the fact, I'm going to keep bemoaning this point, the fact that they're, what's it called? Do as I say, not as I do. They're, the fact that somebody, Newt Gingrich, who's been married 3 times and cheated on 2 of his wives when they were dying of cancer. And he's like, gay marriage, that screws with the sanctity of marriage. What is that called? There's a word that I'm missing for that.
Hypocrisy is what I
Hypocrisy.
call it. Yeah.
The hypocrisy that people aren't pointing out the hypocrisy. The only people pointing out the hypocrisy are comedians, which drives me absolutely bonkers.
It's because I think people don't recognize, so the left thinks that conservative thinks egalitarian, and they're being disingenuous.
Yeah.
Newt Gingrich thinks he's better than you.
Yes.
He thinks he's higher. And his argument would be, I've made more money. I'm popular. People voted for me. So he has all this thing. I'm better. I'm allowed to do that because the better people are. Now, he may never rationalize that, but that's how his brain works because he sees in a hierarchy. He sees gay people as less.
Yeah.
And they don't get to mingle. He can rationalize it with religion, which is what they do. But a lot of religion, the reason it sings to the conservative is its hierarchy. There is God, there is the man, there is the family, and then there's society, essentially.
You missed a few steps.
But
there's God, there's
Jesus.
man.
Yeah.
No, there's God, there's man, there's woman.
That's-
There's God,
said
there's
family.
man, there's woman.
Yeah.
There's family.
Yeah. But-
then there's the proletariat.
Yeah.
So here's
But-
the ironic part. Have you ever read the original text? The original, not translation, the Aramaic text on man shall not lie with man as he lie with woman. Do you know the story behind this?
No, I don't speak Armenian.
Aramaic, not Armenian, doofus. So in the book, and I'm going to do graphs up on the wall, it actually says man, capital M, man, shall not lie with lowercase m, man, as he lie with lowercase w, woman. What that is saying is the chosen shall not lie with the proletariat
Yeah.
as they lie with woman, because at that point, women are actually on a lower level than men. It's not saying gay sex is not okay. It's saying gay sex is okay within your class.
Which
So
everything's a hierarchy. They'd probably actually buy that. It's always been true. Look at the amount of closeted gay Republicans.
Larry Craig,
Yeah.
the toe tapper.
Probably Lindsey Graham. But
Well, no, the part that cracks me up, I'm going to go back to a Sorkin quote. That scene where he goes off on the Dr. Laura character, and he was like, you don't like gay marriage. So my chief of staff works on Sundays. Do I kill him or do you kill him?
Or
The Notre Dame football plays with the skin of a dead pig. Do you kill them or do I kill them? And he goes through
can
all
I
that.
get a good price for my daughter?
Yes.
Can
He
I-
goes through all that stuff, and it's like, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Problem with Sorkin is that it's such a a liberal wet dream.
Yes. I'm going to make fun of somebody else. So I've been rewatching West Wing to follow along with West Wing Weekly, the podcast,
Okay.
which Richie Herway, however you pronounce his name, and Josh Molina. Josh Molina? Yeah, Josh Molina. And they do, break down each episode. And then recently, I love him to death, but the comedian Dave Anthony, who does The Dollop, has started one on the West Wing, and all he does is rip on liberals and how stupid and how wet. But all he does is shit on people on the left, even though he's on the left.
Yeah, that's because yet again we recognize our flaws, and they're easy to point out. Pointing out the conservative ones, it's hard. They get so angry. I think there's sometimes a little fear. Like I've seen
On the left or the right?
the right, like trying to call them out, the amount of death threats. Not that they don't come from the left at times,
Yeah.
but just the visceral feel. And yet again, who has the guns? like I'm not looking to get shot at because I upset, some wingnut who thinks that he's
Okay, then I'm going to go back to this topic. Arming the teachers. Here's something I learned long ago when I fought. You take kickboxing. At 2 weeks, you can't beat up anybody on the street because it's almost like, well, they have to hold me in a certain pose. You have to develop a confidence and a comfortableness in when shit really hits the fan to when it's a surprise, you can actually react. It's the same way it is with guns. If somebody goes and shoots once a year, they are not going to be able to hit center mass on you. There was a report on cops where they shot an unarmed black person, big shocker, in New York, and it was like they fired, it was something like 67 bullets from not point blank range, but really close, and it was like 4 different officers and only 11 hit. And the reporter on the podcast said, that's somebody who does that on a daily basis, gets tested on it, and even they in that stress environment are not 100%.
Oh, yeah.
So you're saying a teacher having to reach into a locked drawer to get one and then shoot is going to magically put it right in between your eyes. So the point is, when you get a death threat and somebody threatens you with a gun,
Oh, I know.
I've had a gun in my face on 3 separate occasions within the space of this mic, and I'm still here. Because all 3 times I was like, you better kill me, because if you don't kill me,
But
I'm going to take your gun and I'm going to kill you.
it's more I get the fear, like,
Yeah.
of these people constantly.
Yeah.
But you end up with, that's
think
why I
most-
always talk about that good guy with the gun scenario in a
Yeah.
mass shooting. If I'm running from bullets one way, don't shoot back, because I don't want to be trying to dodge them
Yeah.
both ways.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work out. Maybe you'll stop him before he kills 30 instead of 25, but
Yeah.
and you may take some out. Could you imagine not stopping him and killing like 3 other civilians?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and a big problem I have is, like, I was walking through New York one time. I feel like I sound bougie when I'm saying that. But this thing hit me where I walked past, like, a group of cops. And every single one of them, and I know I could use a few pounds around the old gut, but there were like 4 older cops standing there with guts hanging over their guns. And I almost walked up to them and said, guys, I just want to point this out. I can knock every one of you out before you could get to your guns. Because I think about that when I go into the Bijou, Tennessee, and I have Papa's little pocket knife, and they're like, you can't have that in here. It's a weapon. I was like, brother, I can knock you out before I could hurt you with this dull-ass knife. It's like, but that's authoritarianism. That's if we don't take this away, then the terrorists win.
yeah, well, it's
We know the terrorists have one because I'm having to give away
a pocket knife
a pocket knife.
when I could strangle you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just this.
I've like saying I can
here's-
pop you on the head and do a factory reset.
Here's
You didn't even catch that. Boop, factory reset.
Here's a leftist argument for guns that had someone bring up recently. If they did try to take guns
Yeah.
and enforce, and there is actual a movement, disenfranchised groups, poor black people, like they would be the first they tried to take guns from.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the people who actually may need them the most. Someone out there trying to protest against against literal Nazis.
Yeah.
Like someone who's poor, living in a poor neighborhood, who may get shot, had drive-bys daily.
Well, that's like, when Richard Spencer got punched in the face, it was like, why are the left being held to a higher standard?
Yeah.
Like, that guy's a literal Nazi. Like, our grandfathers fought to kill those guys.
Yeah.
And that guy's rights are such that this guy can't punch. No, that's a Nazi. You
Yeah.
need to take that one out,
I mean, yeah. Like, to be honest, I think recognize that we do live in a society, and if you punch a Nazi, you need to run from the police because there are laws, but or get caught and accept that, but also punch Nazis. I'm fully okay.
So
with
I got one for you. So that first time I marched in the Pride Parade, there were hardly any protesters, but there were, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound very rough, but it is what it is. Like, and if somebody who is Muslim sitting here with me, I would say it right to their face. We got all the way to the end, and right in front of the Coliseum were a man and a woman, young woman, probably mid to late 20s, full-on Muslim garb, with a bullhorn, shouting about how we're all going to hell. Because, so they're doing that.
It's going to be fabulous.
Yeah. It's going to be fabulous.
I'm just saying, there's some really cool people in hell. I'd much rather be hanging out with them.
With Hunter Thompson, man.
So no, because he's going to be shooting at you as soon as you get down.
I go up. Yeah, but he's on pills. He's never going to hit you.
That's true. He never hit his neighbor.
So I go up, and I'm in like the Pride Festival. I go to leave, and I'm going to meet my friend Kristen, because 2 things happened that day that were weird. It's funny. 3 things happened that were weird. As I'm walking into Pride, the cops, you had to go through a metal wand, and I'm walking up, and in front of me is a guy in leather, like, I don't know how to put it. He was in BDSM gear. But his mask that fully covered his face was like a pig head. And it was like 150 degrees that day because it's in June.
Good for him.
Yeah. No. So that's the cop. So the cop was a big old, and he looked like a country boy. And he was going through the dude's bag, and then he looked at him, and he's like, man, isn't that hot? And he just laughed. And the guy was like, yeah, it's pretty hot. He's like, he didn't say good for you. He's like, man, you're a braver soul than I. And I want to go, this is amazing. This is a cop that is okay with this. Like, this is insane. Like, I love it. Like, I almost want to go, guys, do you realize what's going on here? Like, this is crazy. So then I left there, and that couple that was shouting at us, actually the woman wasn't shouting because apparently she knew her place, but we won't get into that. So as I'm walking back, I go to cross the street, and I'm crossing near where they're standing, and there are 3 cops standing around, and she is holding her camera phone or GoPro up, filming the cops talking. Because I don't know that he had you have to apply for a permit to protest, which is good to me. I'm actually, if you're going to set up and protest, not do like, you know what I mean?
If you're going to, I guess, occupy an area, sure. But I also think
he occupied public area because he was on the sidewalk.
Yeah, like, I do think that sometimes shutting down a road, even as inconvenient as it is, has a reason. Like,
okay, let me go back. I think I'm okay with that because it was on my side. It was on the gay side. I'm okay with him having to Westboro Baptist Church having to get a permit to protest. I'm fine with that because you're also impeding someone's.
But that being said, depending on
what
you're doing, like
but
with
when,
Black Lives Matter shutting down interstates, sure.
Oh,
like,
actually, I'm fine with that. They don't need a permit.
Yeah, because they need to be out there.
Yeah,
because I'm
so
tired
anyway.
of
So I know I'm
by...
hypocritical there, and the guy and his wife were tiny, like they were tiny, like short and skinny. And as I walked past, I thought about this as I hit the corner. I should have, and I've had some people on the left fuss at me about this, and some people on the left like almost like hug me for saying this. I said, as I passed him with those cops standing there, I had an opening. I should have grabbed him by the head and gave him the biggest, deepest kiss on the mouth, and then turned around the cop and said, "Take me to jail. I'll have bail before you get me up there, and I can see it from here. I will have bail in no time." Like, I almost did it, and some of my friends were like, that's assault. You shouldn't do that. I was like, fuck that guy. Like, I'm sorry.
Sometimes you got to punch a Nazi, man.
So that's where I was like, if you have nothing better to do than to stand out here and tell people that you don't know they're going to hell.
But I mean, look at the response: the left versus.
So anyway, so that was the guy in the pig mask was one. That was number two, where I almost went back and kissed that dude because I was just like, you know what? I am comfortable in myself. I'm not gay, but I will take one for the team here. Like, and then the third thing is we went to cigar shop at Merchants of Beer, the old diner. So we're sitting there, and it's my friend Kristen, who is bisexual, and her brother, and she's got like a pride thing, and I'm sitting there with my back to him. There's a PS to this story, so give me a second. So this older guy that looks homeless walks in, and he gets a cigar, and he starts smoking, and he's drinking a beer. But he looks drunk, and it's noon, and homeless. Like, he looks very disheveled and whatever. But he can afford a cigar and a beer, so he can't be homeless, from what I'm guessing. And he's sitting there away from us, to my back here, and he's staring at Kristen like a hole through Kristen. And we're talking about barbecue. That's what makes this even funnier. And then he said, "Do you ever just shut the fuck up and listen to music?" And we were like, "What?" And he's like, "He's playing some damn good tunes and y'all won't shut the fuck up." And I turned around and was like, "Who gets mad at talking? We're talking about barbecue. Who gets mad about that?" And he was like, "I just wish." And at that time, John, the owner, walked in, and he knew something was, and he's a former Navy dude. And he looked at the dude, and he's like, "Do we have a problem?" And the guy was like, "They won't shut up." And he was like, "I think you can go outside now." And he's like, "Music's playing out there. You can go out there." And Kristen and her brother are finally kind of figuring out what's going on, and they're getting upset. And they're kind of barking back at him a little bit. And I'm just sitting there smoking my cigar. I was like, John's got this. I ain't got to worry about this, which is my PS. So, and the guy gets up, and he just launches, "Fuck pride," and just starts going off on them. And then that point, John's like, "You need to leave right now." Like, John was almost pushing the guy out of there. John is not I think he's kind of, he says no politics in that, which I love him for that. I think he's more right leaning. Like, he and I had talked a few times. He's not a Hillary supporter, but in that moment, he's like, "No, this is not right. You need to get off." So he did that. And then I think Kristen or her brother were like, "You didn't say anything." It's like, nope. When I say something, this is the PS. When I say something, it elevates the situation. If I stood up, that guy would throw that beer at me, or we would be fighting, and I would have to put him through that door. I'm not going to go to jail. He's a drunk idiot. He got pushed out. If he had tried to touch John, I would have knocked him out. Like, I would have just walked over and just knocked him out and probably drug him out on the sidewalk and called the cops and said, "You need to pick this piece of shit up." But I tried to explain to them, I was like, when you're this big, you and I have had this discussion before, you don't step in until it's time
Also,
to step in.
There's the fear, like, when you are a bigger guy, if I hit somebody, I could kill them. Like, if they fall backwards, hit their head funny.
Yeah.
If I just have a hit that I hit them hard and knock them out, that I'm not looking to kill somebody for their idiocy.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to really fight them.
No.
And I will look down and be like, "You need to get out," if I need to. But like, I'm not trying to
My job is to
murder somebody.
Anytime I've had to step in, I've always said my job is to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
Like the guy I think I told you, like, that was drunk after Mardi Gras, where I went over and literally picked him up and turned him around. And he was like, I'm sorry. He's like, "Yep, we're going to stop this right now."
Bye.
Yeah.
But
I still wish I would kiss that dude.
yeah, well. But going back to
Yeah.
the response to the left and the right. So we
Yeah.
have literal Nazis.
So no. The gay marriage thing, because I just want to put a button on that. The thing that drives me nuts about that, it's the same people who argue that the government shouldn't be coming into their house and taking their guns, but the government should be telling people what they can or can't do in their home, is weird to me.
It's very strange.
Like, I think,
There's
what is it called? Anal. I don't. There's the proper term for it.
Sodomy.
Sodomy is still illegal in Georgia.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of weird laws on the books.
But you know what I mean? Like,
It's
that's
this
the government going into somebody's house. though.
and I know there's not a lot of. It's because people can't rationalize what I actually want is the government to do what I want.
Yeah.
Not and gay people kissing grosses me out if it's men. I'm okay with it in women in my porn. But I mean that's obviously where it comes down to.
Oh, you're saying people say that? I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
wait, are
like-
you saying that?
No. It's, you know,
Well, no, I joked that I was like, anyone kissing in public makes me uncomfortable.
that's absolutely true. PDA is gross.
PDA
Yeah.
bugs the crap out of me.
Nice handhold, maybe a hug. You can get a smooch on a kiss, or smooch on a kiss, smooch on the cheek. That's as far as I go.
Yeah, PDA grosses me out.
But you've got, we're talking about the difference between responses in left and right. Look at the last 2 years, the views of the media and society on Antifa, as if Antifa is some giant terrorist organization wreaking havoc in cities. You know, it's usually a group of maybe 10 people running around calling themselves anti-fascists.
So at the last Pride Parade, and I made the mistake of saying this to somebody that it was, and I sounded super redneck when I say this, so I'll go into my redneck voice when I say this. Turns out it was somebody's cousin. I was at the Pride Parade, and right at the beginning, there were 2 Antifa people there.
See,
And 2, but they were smaller. It was a guy and a girl, but they were dressed like in military fatigues.
Yeah,
And I looked at the dude, and I was like, "You couldn't hurt a fly." And I was talking to somebody. I was like, I wanted to go over and say, "You all need to go home, because you're gonna talk a lot of trash, and a cop's gonna have to stamp in because you can't hurt anybody." And my friend was like, "Oh, that's my cousin." I was like, "Tell your cousin to stay home. Stop getting in the military gear and stop coming down
And
to
so
or start lifting weights." One of the two.
I was about to say, I do get the masks because they can get targeted.
Yeah.
Like, we have the faces of people who are carrying tiki torches and
Yeah.
having a march
Yeah.
for white power.
Yeah.
And you get, like I said, you get 10, even in a big demonstration, 50 people who their goal is anti-fascism. And yeah, we'll be violent if we have to. But
Yeah.
the actual violence is I'm going to punch a Nazi or I'm going to spray paint at them. Like, the reaction should be, yeah, they are bad optics at times.
Yeah.
But it's not some giant, huge terrorist
No.
organization. When we do have actual proclaimed Nazis coming back and being like, "Oh, Hitler wasn't
Well,
so
and
bad."
you have actual like mass shootings.
Yeah.
And like the dude in Vegas that
Yeah.
just opened fire. That guy is not the problem. We're going to hurl thoughts and prayers at that.
Yeah.
But, you know, these punk ass kids that are 5 foot tall and weigh 100 pounds soaking wet, those are the ones.
Who are mad at Nazis who they should be mad at.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
that's I was like, even if they were some organized group, they're mad at Nazis
Yeah.
and fascists.
Yeah.
Like, because they
The
are
Nazi thing is, if you would have given me $1 million, I would have never been able to predict that
not
Nazis.
explicitly Nazi.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be one thing like, oh, like,
They're a socialist group.
yeah, or you're getting it where they're like, oh, they're Nazis. But I mean, we have a precedent that's like, they don't want me to say it, but you know, like, I don't see what's wrong with nationalism.
Oh,
Like,
no. I got you.
He leads
So-
into it.
So Sean and I were in one of the cigar shops since John is not. So they kicked John out of Merchants of Beer. Did I tell you that?
No.
They're trying to make Merchants of Beer more family friendly.
Why? It's a beer joint with a cigar shop in the back.
They are losing out on tens of thousands of dollars a month because they kicked John out of there. Nobody will go back there. Nobody in our group. And that group spent tens of thousands of dollars a month.
It's all right when it closes. Bring down a Skyline chili. Give me 24-hour Cincinnati chili.
No, when it closes, John needs to take it all over and it needs to be one massive cigar bar.
I'll take that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't smoke or drink, but I mean, that's fine.
Because you've met John. John's the nicest guy in the world. Yeah, I forgot. You've met John. He's the white-haired guy that's in there. Sweetest guy, nicest guy in the
They
world.
kicked him out. Like,
Yeah, it's so stupid. But anyway, we were in a cigar shop, and this is literally last week. And Sean and I are sitting in there working. What's funny is I was wearing this. This was last Tuesday. I was wearing this sweatshirt, and I was in there from 10 o'clock till 4:30 p.m. I can still smell the cigars on this thing. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, but anyway, so we're sitting in there, and they have, a table with like bar seats, not stools, but the seats with the back. So we're sitting up there working, and over to the side are like 6 to 7 big cushy chairs. And in those chairs are 6 older white dudes. All of them affluent, dressed to the nines, whatever, and they're sitting there smoking. And they're talking about politics and talking about all this crazy stuff. And there's a point where Sean went to the bathroom and we went to Starbucks or something, and they literally started talking about Nazis. And they were there, and this is a phrase I actually heard. We know a lot of the people in the concentration camps that were running them were not actually Germans and Nazis. They were from other countries. And that was the point. If Sean had been there, I would have done it just to make him laugh. Although I couldn't have gone back to that cigar shop, which wouldn't have been good. The ironic part is the woman that worked there is a younger lesbian woman. And I was like, this could go either way. But I almost went over and said, 2 things, guys. 2 things. Let's go with this. Your fathers killed Nazis, so let's not defend Nazis. Number 2, I'm smarter than all 6 of you put together about politics by a country mile. You're all idiots.
Well, even if so, let's go down yet again. Follow that logic. So say it wasn't. Say they had brought in. It would have essentially, I guess, been prisoners at that point.
Ukrainians.
And had them run the prisons.
No, it wouldn't have been Ukrainians. It'd been
and the concentration camps.
Yeah.
Had them do that. Who organized that? Yeah. What was the goal of them?
Yeah, all the higher ups were all Germans.
Yeah, we know that because we put them on trial.
Yes.
Eichmann's argument was, I never killed anybody. I made the trains run on time, and you made the trains run on time to what, Eichmann? What did they do?
Well, we either put them on trial or we hired them for our NASA program. Yeah. You do know that, right?
Yes, that's true.
Werner von Braun.
Yeah, von Braun. A lot of the Nazis came over here and were good rocket scientists.
But that's such a weird thing now that it's...
The fact that people defend Nazis because there is a strong... So I said the media in general is for moneyed interest, and it's true on both sides. Does MSNBC...
don't use that phrase, on both sides.
Yeah. Well, does MSNBC lean a little more left? Yes, not greatly left. They're really... yet again, very moneyed. But Fox News was designed to prevent what happened to Richard Nixon from ever happening again.
Huh.
And that's true. That Roger Ailes, Rupert Murdoch were like, that's not happening again. And they created a propaganda network that is essentially now state news when it's someone there on the line. And then you have wingnuts who have infinite access to radio and podcasting. Alex Jones.
Rush. Although I haven't heard Rush Limbaugh's name in a long time.
He still has TV. My mother's husband listens to him daily.
What about Bill O'Reilly?
Bill O'Reilly, I think, has a podcast, but he's not what he once was.
I actually used to like him in the 90s because it was 9/11 that made him a nut job.
It's happened to Dennis Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Like, real hard.
So I asked Amanda Hara, who was on the podcast before, because she's a news anchor at VLT, about, like, how do you take all, like, this, like, fake news and stuff? And she was like, I report the news. Like, it's hard to, like, and it was fascinating. But the other thing was, there's a new movie coming out called Bombshell. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about this?
This is the one with girls about Fox News.
Yes, it's
Nicole Kidman and
Charlize
Theron,
and Margot Robbie, and John Lithgow's playing.
Is he Ailes? He may be Ailes.
I think he's Ailes.
Yeah.
No, who's the one that was actually handsy and gropey?
I know O'Reilly was, but I thought
no. I thought
Roger Ailes, isn't he?
Hey, it may have been Roger Ailes. It may have been the last name that I'm used. Anyway, which it's creepy seeing John Lithgow on like the fat makeup and stuff. He's a great actor.
He's always great when he does this thing.
But they were talking about that movie and they were like, it's kind of dangerous for this movie to come out. I was like, we all knew this happened. Yeah. What the hell are you talking about? This is not dangerous. They're also complaining about Clint Eastwood saying essentially all of his movies now are couched in Republic, like the Richard Jewell movie,
Yeah.
is essentially coming out to go against the investigation and stuff.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Like that there are fake, like John Hamm's character is not a real character. It's an amalgam of a bunch.
Cool.
Let's turn your mic
Up,
down.
down.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
You, the other,
We were talking about
you
Fox
should look-
News fake
well,
news.
you should look at is like Sinclair Broadcasting, who owns a lot of the networks, like
Yeah.
the local networks, and they will send out things usually conservative talking points that every network will read at the same time.
Have you seen
on a
that
specific
video
network
where
they
they
all do it, and it's
Yeah.
always conservative talking points?
So that's the other thing about it. If you want to get into the media, like Gannett is about to fire a bunch more people. Like as one of my friends put it, the bloodletting continues. In the News Sentinel building on the first floor where I used to work, that it was full. And you could almost not even fit in the parking lot. There were so many people up there. There are now 13 people on the first floor.
Sure.
And they're talking about moving those 13 people in like sales. There's not even really, the marketing person is a part-time marketing person. Circulation, they're talking about moving them up to editorial so they can rent out the first floor.
Yeah. And you get even scarier with, so not only do you have the same news broadcast going out, you have, I had something along
Yeah,
with
sorry.
the media. Yeah, it's all right. You've got, if those talking points are being spread and not being told that they are Sinclair, like explicit, you don't really have a response ever happening to them. You don't have a left-leaning response to it because most news media are local and they are going to go through what happened locally, what happened nationally, the weather, maybe one little interest piece, and then they're going to read that little broadcast. Move that. I've remembered what I was going to say. Then you have active YouTube. YouTube has a bad algorithm that tends to put people down alt-right holes. A big, bad, major current YouTube channel that promotes itself as a learning channel is PragerU. Prager University is horrendous. The amount of like responses I get to problems like the where I will discuss that are a 5-minute PragerU video that misses or leaves out a ton of information because that's all someone has heard. What the problem is they present things in 5 minutes that sound plausible, but require 2.5 hours to discuss what they're actually talking about
Right.
and why it's horseshit. But like, there's a great guy who talks about looking at PragerU, and that one of their early videos is about this demonization of Rockefeller and why Rockefeller was good. And they don't ever really argue that Rockefeller was good. They try to argue that he's a little moral, but he's just moral because he did certain things. But when taking that video with one of their other video, that the best thing you can be is grateful. So that's what you should be. You should be grateful. And then take that with their Jordan Peterson video about how you can't change society. You should only work on changing yourself. All of them make one giant message.
Okay.
How much did we lose?
No, I'm looking at PragerU.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're still going. I'm
I was
just
like, you sucked your lips like, oh, we haven't been recording for like an hour and a half.
No, I just saw somebody on PragerU that I love that I'm disappointed, but keep going. Yeah.
But those kind of networks exist. And then if you watch those videos, YouTube starts to give you Steven Crowder. And you start to go down that alt-right hole where you never get a response to any of those. You have to go search it out.
I'm trying to remember, what's the Canadian dude?
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson.
Yep, he's on PragerU.
He's not on their main presenter.
But he has had one.
I thought he did.
But
Okay.
what's interesting is they're not Southern Republican. They are moneyed like moneyed New York Republican is PragerU mostly. So you don't get a lot of the states' right arguments from them. You get the let's keep money in politics. It's not the Koch brothers, but it's another double brother billionaire who funds PragerU.
Yeah.
Dennis Prager's their like figurehead, but he's not the one giving their money.
I'm just looking through. What the shit? No.
Oh boy.
Oh,
I'm
God.
curious who you're finding that you love so much on PragerU.
Well, here, I'll run through some of these people that I don't like. God, there's so many people on this, so this may take a second. I knew Adam Carolla's on there. He's a
Yeah.
bootstraps guy.
Oh yeah.
That he
Of course
grew up
is.
super poor, but he's also like, well, everything should just fall in line for you. It's like, that's not what. Now, Alan Dershowitz, I didn't realize he was on here. I don't think I'd realized he was crazy right wing.
People get older.
There's a lot of these names I don't know, but that's going to be like I'm actually looking. This one woman, I do recognize her. I can't pronounce her. Women's rights activist.
Is it
champion.
The activist Christina.
Ayan Hersha Ali.
Oh yeah.
I've seen her on other things, but
like I'm trying to remember her.
I think she's anti-Muslim, even though
Yes.
she. Clay Travis is one of the two that the first one that I sucked my teeth was Mike Rowe. That
Oh, yeah.
hurts.
Does it?
Yes.
I mean, looking into Mike Rowe, he's had a lot of conservative ties throughout.
I know.
And moneyed conservative. And even his, outside of his blue collar argument, the problem I have with a lot of that is, yeah, you're right now. But blue collar jobs will need a point until a robot does it. And it's not, and it destroys your body. Like people don't talk as much about the physical symptoms of crawling houses and doing a lot of these works. I do think it's great and we need them and people should not disparage that sort of work. But, it goes back to like coal mining. That is awful for people. We need to not do it.
But you need plumbers. You need
do.
electrical.
For now.
That's his argument is
Don't dismiss it. You're right.
Yeah.
But
well, no, he
also-
was saying and he's been saying this for like 12 years. He's like, because I still remember, it's funny, I've watched all of his videos where he went before the House of Representatives to try and do a national PR campaign. It's like, we need to be pushing kids instead of saying you have to go to college. He was like, just because you go to a college doesn't mean you get a job.
No.
He was like, but if you go to a trade school, he's like, there's a lot of kids that don't have the grades to go to college. So plumbers are getting expensive, electrical's getting expensive, all this stuff's getting really stupid expensive.
But I worked for, AT&T running wires and
I can't believe Clay Travis. Clay Travis has Knoxville ties.
does he?
He started a website called Outkick the Coverage, and he does one called On Rocky Top. If you look him up on Twitter, you'll find him. But he wrote a post on PragerU called Politics and Sports, Keep Your Hands Off My Football. And the artwork is somebody kneeling.
Well, it's even
so that was the outlash of the woman at ESPN who essentially backed Kaepernick. I
Yeah.
guarantee you that's what that was.
well, my mother was, so this was great.
Ben Shapiro, Bob McHugh,
Ben
Brian
Shapiro.
Kilmeade, your mother, Candace Owens,
Yeah. Christina Hoff Summers. I'm sure her name's down there.
Charles Krautheimer. I know
yeah.
he was
Charlie.
Charlie Kirk.
yeah.
Oh, God, I hadn't heard that name in forever.
Who? Charlie Kirk?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still pretty popular among certain groups.
Christina Hoff Summers.
Yep.
Clay Travis. Man, I know. And Mike Rowe had gotten money from the Koch brothers, but it was on a nonprofit side. It wasn't on the other side.
But
But I also worked in big corporations where I knew a lot of them do the nonprofit to offset taxes.
yeah, Ben Shapiro's a lovely individual.
David Rubin, David Clark,
So you get
your mom.
my mother. She's
Denise
her step granddaughter wanted some Nike shoes for Christmas, and
Step granddaughter.
yeah, Chaz's granddaughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like, wait, I was trying to do the math on that.
but
one.
she wants Nike shoes, and my mother's like, I don't want to buy her Nike because, and so I waited, and she's like, because of the guy in the football, like, yeah, that guy. I don't want to support Nike because of him. Couldn't give me a name,
Yeah.
and
But
I
she
just
knew
sit
she
there,
was mad.
and I just sit there and I smiled. I was like, I'm sure she doesn't even know why he took a knee, as opposed to just sitting it out as he originally did, because they don't talk about that.
Nope.
Like, and what he's saying is right. You shouldn't support a country that disenfranchises one giant segment of it who is part of who you are. If you are mad at that, you should say, hey, you know what? This is fucked up. Why would I stand for a flag who doesn't represent me or the people like me?
So you know who is kind of anti-taking the knee anymore?
Who?
Larry Wilmore.
Really?
He was like, you made your point at the beginning. It's lost. It's been co-opted.
Yeah, at this point it does seem... Well, I can get the it became flashy at this point,
Yeah.
but you know what they should do is stop playing.
Yeah.
They should just walk out.
There's a funny thing. Steven Crowder. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, he's another.
Tucker Carlson. Oh my God. Tucker Carlson has such a punchable face. I also saw Glenn. Oh, there's
Also, he's a white supremacist racist. So
also Yakov Smirnoff is on here.
of course he is. Surprised they haven't pulled in
Wait,
Gallagher.
he actually did one that looks positive because it's called Love Needs Laughs.
The problem is they do some. They have one. They have a West Point general talking about how the war was about slavery and not about states' right. They will do these small ones to make themselves seem
Okay, because
reputable.
his is like there should be laughter. How do you know you're in love? There should be laughter in your relationship.
Yes, but see, sometimes watching those, you'll start to get other little side messages
Okay.
like,
I'm
and this is
also-
how the man should be. Or,
I'm also in private browsing for this, so I
yeah,
don't.
so you don't
God,
ruin your...
Jocko Willnick. That's another disappointing, but I knew he was.
Yep.
Macro.
Some of these people, I'm
Macro,
worried.
that hurts, man.
I don't think they... I'm curious how much they know about how
Macro's
money...
is called "Don't Follow Your Passion."
Yeah. Don't follow your passion. Probably follow what you're good at. Something along those lines. Follow what will be beneficial to your family and society.
Which is hilarious because what he does.
Mhm.
Okay. Holy crap, that's disappointing. That's so disappointing. Because I still love him.
I've ruined Jody's.
I know. That's one of the, because honestly, he has a new book out, and I was going to buy a copy for Dad and I for Christmas. Damn it.
Just
Adam Carolla's one that lost me a long time ago.
yeah, I
Like
tried.
I read one of his books. It was about how he made it,
Mhm.
which was really good. And then his second book was essentially like, we're a bunch of pansies. We need to man up. And I was like,
I mean, did you not see his most recent roast
No.
speech? He gives this thing about all these SJW. Honestly, if you say the word SJW in a derisive way, I just stopped listening.
so Sean is, I'm going to tell on Sean a second. He said, I actually think Rogan is no longer the path to
the alt-right.
the alt-right. Now that path to alt-right is Bill Burr.
I would buy that. Yeah, Bill Burr. But there's a great video recently out about like how cancel culture isn't real.
Yeah.
Like this idea that people get canceled because they say something stupid. Like they point out like, actually tell me who's been canceled, who actually went away for good. Because Paula Dean's back and she threw a slavery plantation wedding.
Yeah.
Like every one of these, he ends up with what? Maybe Roseanne? Like Roseanne Barr? Actually, it seems she's got a couple of things in production. Like they don't
Oh,
go
she's
away.
got shows.
You have just got the first time society looks at you and says, no, you can't be an asshole, or you're being an asshole, and stop being an asshole. And there's just the slightest bit of repercussion. For the first time, you have a little bit of repercussion, but
little
you're
bit
not
of pushback.
canceled. I mean, he even brings up, like, he's like, even on the left, James Gunn, like, we all complained about him. So now, not only did he get another movie, he's back directing the movie he got kicked off from. It doesn't actually happen. No one is canceled. Don't act. You can act as if you can't say anything or you'll go away.
Here, I will. I'm not going to correct you. I'm going to say, and anybody who is like, I'm trying to remember that comedian's name. There's a comedian that's a big. Hold on. I'm going to look him up. He's also one that wants to fight all the time, which cracks me up because he's my size. Like, he's a big dude. Steve Byrne. It's not Steve Byrne, but he had a TV show on TBS, Sullivan and Son. So he had a comedian that I actually thought was funny for years. This guy, I'm going to try and find his name real quick. Owen Benjamin. So Owen Benjamin essentially thought he had the right to say the N-word or whatever he wanted to on Twitter. And I think YouTube deplatformed him. Twitter, see, they're using those as excuses.
Yeah,
So then he started Patreon,
of course.
and he gets thousands of dollars. Now, Owen Benjamin will not be able to star in any movies or anything.
True,
But he's found an alternative way
and
for
he
money.
hasn't gone away.
No.
That's the and I bet you push it. There's some conservative films and things that would use him.
Oh, yeah, that's like,
like
like everybody's talking about how Hollywood is so left and everything. And there's even a documentary about how if you're on the right, you don't get hired in Hollywood. So the funniest thing to me about that is Vince Vaughn is a hardcore right-winger.
Yep.
Mel Gibson is a hardcore right-winger.
Yep.
Kelsey Grammer is a hardcore right-winger.
Tim Allen and has been. He's blood family. He doesn't even still gets movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, but I laugh about the Kelsey Grammer because I was like, he's welcome in, like, because of Frasier, he's welcome in a lot of left-leaning doors.
Yeah.
It's like, but he is when Trump was running, he wore a "Make America Great Again" shirt.
One that video brings up is Lisa Lampanelli. He goes, people probably didn't remember Lisa as much, but she used to be big on the roasts, and the stuff she said was always crass and fairly offensive. And he goes, so what's Lisa doing now? And he cuts. She's like, I realized not what I said was necessarily bad because I was very careful about how I said it. But she goes, I'm looking at a society that is hurting these disenfranchised. So I'm going to actually focus my time on trying to make these people's lives better.
Yeah, she's like a motivational
Yeah,
speaker.
she's
now.
great now. Right?
Yeah.
She's very kind. And she's like, she didn't disappear. And her stuff would have been pushing the boundaries because, you
Yeah.
know, it was at a time where she's like, I like fucking big black guys. And
No,
like,
I think the most interesting thing that's going to happen in the next 6 months is when Eddie Murphy finally does a special, people are going to revisit his first two specials.
Yeah,
Now,
Raw.
do you know about his
Oh
first?
yeah, but
like-
he did it. He came out. They bring up Eddie Murphy. He did some in the '90s. Actually, say he was wrong about, and
Okay.
that's what they bring up. That's what people want. People are
Okay,
willing to
I haven't
forgive.
seen the page 16 story on that. Then.
Yeah, but people-
B16, you know.
People want, if you come out and you sound sincere, like if you say some crazy shit and then you come out and you're like, you know what, I was wrong.
well,
or
it's like the whole
I didn't know.
Kevin Hart and Tracy Morgan took lumps because they made jokes about if their son was gay,
Yeah.
they'd kill him or whatever. And they made, like, Tracy Morgan had to go and do a press conference, and he was crying.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go, Tracy Morgan, A, is like the sweetest guy in the world.
But
And B, no, here's the funniest part. That's the least crazy thing. He also said he was going to get everyone in the audience pregnant. So do you think he should apologize for saying he was going to rape all the women in the audience?
so him apologizing is a good start for the gay thing. Like, the big problem with comedy is punching down. Like,
Yeah.
quit punching. And like in Kevin Hart's case, you know, the
It
guy,
was something he had said 10 years ago.
I know, but he brings up like it was offensive. You should have apologized, and I hope your son doesn't hear that, especially if he's gay.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it comes down to. He's like, if you're willing to, because he brings up Dan Harmon, who had a lot of issues with some of the stuff he said about women, and Dan came out and said, you know what, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. I did.
Okay.
I could only say these things about women if I didn't look at them as people and I looked at them as objects.
Here's where I'm going to refine what I'm saying. Here's a problem with the left. For a lot of people on the left, it's still not good enough.
And that is, I do think it depends on what they've gone through.
Yeah.
Like I said, because people still consider it cancel culture, but I haven't seen people canceled.
I think the Tracy Morgan thing bugged me because I know he's such a nice guy. He's a comedian, and he says outrageous shit on TV.
It's true.
And like that, he probably said 100 things, and that was maybe on number 37 on the list of the most outrageous thing he said, and he was saying it as a joke.
But, you know, and
I
it
think
depends
it's
on
that
the
he's a
time.
nice
you
guy.
You
and
can
I
always
like him.
say,
I think it's because he's a nice guy
Yeah,
and I like him.
yeah, and funnily enough, that's what he brings up. The final thing that video brings up is Carlin, because a lot of people are like, George Carlin would hate this, and George Carlin will always tell you it's the meaning behind the words. If you're
Yeah.
punching down, he even has a comment about Clay, like
Yeah.
Andrew Dice Clay, where someone asked him, what do you think about Clay? And he's like, well, he can say what he wants. But it's weird to me that the people Clay is pointing out, the homosexuals, he kind of goes through this list. He goes, the people that don't like those and that are laughing with him, he's a Jewish man. He's on that list somewhere.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
Yeah.
You know, and so Carlin was always very careful. I did not know this. Do you know there was one special that Carlin actually edited and cut out? It was aired on September 9th and September 10th,
Yeah.
2001. And the special title was, I kind of like it when a bunch of people died.
Yeah.
Carlin recognized that maybe this wasn't the time for that.
Rogan and a lot of comedians talk about that.
Yeah. Like that there is a time.
So you asked what Roseanne was doing. She actually did a mini tour with Andrew Dice Clay.
That's not surprising to me.
Okay, here's another one. Did you watch the last Dave Chappelle special?
Yeah, I did.
I actually thought it was.
I thought there was a lot of funny.
I thought it was more of almost like a one-man show than
Yeah.
it was a comedy special.
Yeah, and there was a lot of points I had funny in it. The only thing that rubbed me a little bit wrong, and I know why he did it, is trying to excuse his jokes by saying it made this trans person laugh. Essentially, like, let me tell you about how it affected this person. If you had the confidence in your joke, then it shouldn't matter that she found that funny.
Yeah.
And I know that he's getting, there was a great comic I saw where it's a guy making a comedy special about being censored, and each of his specials is called censored and canceled and what the SJWs don't want you, and each one he just gets more money. There's some, and I mean look at Chappelle's newest special. Yeah, did some critics complain? Sure, but the overwhelming audience response on it was 98%.
Well, that was the screwy thing that came out about Rotten Tomatoes, about how they limited the critics.
Yeah.
And it was 5 critics or something crazy, and it had a 0%. And everybody's pointing, it's see, we're done with him. Cancel. To your point about see, we're done with him because all they hate it, and then the audience score came out. It was 99 or something.
But then again, you also have the people in the audience that feel like they have to defend this guy who is rich because he's now a badge for them to prove that they're against it.
I'll point out something. This is more of a nationalism comment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting with my friend Kristen, who is a bisexual woman. We're sitting in Skybox smoking cigars, and it's right when the women's soccer team was winning. And I looked at her, and I was like, I just don't care about soccer. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I was like, I'm not going to be nationalistic for a sport that I don't like. And she was like, you're absolutely right. I was like, but I feel like I'm being badgered online if I don't buy it because Trump picked on that woman, that I'm not buying her jersey. Good for her that she sold the most jerseys ever. Cool. I don't care. Because there's part of, and Kristen and I had an hour-long conversation about, rich white women are a little rough right now, about how hard they have it. And I said, and I told her, it's because from my perspective, I know what it was like to really grow up hard, and I'm from the white perspective. I can't imagine the black perspective, because I'm sitting there at the same time, I'm like, and Colin Kaepernick's still not playing football. We all need to get behind this, but Colin Kaepernick is still not playing football. But my point, to go back to the beginning, is it's okay to just not like something.
And that's absolutely true. And
I feel like nowadays we're being told we have to like certain things because it's
one rich person picking on another rich person and caring about what the rich
No. I mean, it's more of the team sports aspect. It's no, you need to get on our team. But it's I'm not on your team.
I don't care. I think you can say, hey, Donald Trump, don't be a douche to this woman because she's a woman in soccer, but I don't give a shit about soccer because I don't really care that much about her either, because she's a rich white woman that's going to be fine, and he's a rich white man that's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it's part of that social media where I don't have to play with any of this.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. You have a lot of money, you're gonna be fine. You know,
Well, that's
like
I talked to her about this, and I think I've talked to you about this, but I'll say it on here. And I even brought it up to like Katie, who's on my podcast talking about LGBTQ plus issues. I was like, Jill Soloway, who created Transparent. There's already problems with her in the show Transparent because, you know, Jeff, what's his name, was not the nicest guy. And
yeah.
and also of her perspective of all this. And I said, I listened to her interview and she was on Larry Wilmore. God, he's getting name checked a lot. And I got through about a third of that interview and I had to shut it off because it was literally a rich white woman going, well, you know, everybody just needs to do this. And it's like, no, you have money, dumbass. Like, and also your family was wealthy. Like, it was one of those, I was like, I had to turn it off because she was so tone deaf about how everyone had to do what she said.
Class consciousness is important.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of evening between two sides.
Jesus.
Very,
Yeah.
very rich white people, like even rich, like people of color, money starts to even that playing field once they get up there. The other side is very poor. Like, yeah, the black person will be looked down upon usually by the other poor white guy, but that the people above them just look down on them equally. Outside of inherent racism based within their kind of consciousness, but they just look at the poor, as the proletariat. They're making the same amount of money, which is $7.25 an hour.
Yeah.
They're not moving up. They don't have health care. They're just the poor, and
They're the little people.
and so really, if you started focusing on class consciousness more than just that inherent sexism, which exists, and inherent racism, which exists, the classes, the lower classes, actually banding together because there's a lot more of those, are a lot more functional as a block.
I think the problem I see in like my field and a lot of things is younger, attractive, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but we're also like 4 hours in. Although there was a break.
It was like an hour break.
There was a break in the middle for anybody's like, we're not 4 hours in. In my field, in art and in graphic design, there's a lot of very pretty, very young white women, very affluent white women who are like, I have had it hard. It's like, no, you haven't. You are out of your mind. This is an argument I got into with a friend of mine that she grew up in Maryville, and she said every woman has it harder than every man. And I was like, you are out of your damn mind. Because if you're telling me a white woman who grew up in Farragut with rich parents who's going to marry a rich dude who she's going to be able to get a rich job has it harder than a black man growing up in East Knoxville. And I was like, I'll do you one better. I feel worse for his mom, who's probably a single mom, who's and I don't mean to generalize, but I'm pointing out actual examples of real shit.
Yeah.
And then she was like, no. That girl in Farragut has it worse than that guy. I was like, you're stupid. Like, literally, that guy has died. I have been to that guy's funeral.
They have a different experience, and there were negatives. Absolutely, because I've recognized I'm a white guy that's came from essentially middle class and have been. Well, I'm mostly poor, but I have family that has helped. But I'm mostly middle class white guy. If society falls and I don't get gunned down, I'm probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know, when Trump got elected, I texted you and I said, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. You know, like, I have a lot of friends that are worried about this. You're like, I got a lot of friends. And I said, well, actually, we're going to be fine. We're two middle class white guys. Like, what do we have?
Well,
and
I'm lower class white guy.
yeah, that's true.
Work
but we're still a white guy in the United States of America.
Work has been tough. But.
You know, like as many problems as Louis C.K. has had, that one bit about him going like, why would you never come back like white and a man? Yeah, like why would I choose anything else if I got to choose coming back? And so that white girl in Farragut went through some shit, I am sure, because we do have a lot of problems in this country. But people, shouldn't be countering each other in that sort of function.
My point with her is she is always going to have a safety net. Just like exactly what you said earlier about that is a rich white woman and a rich white dude, and they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
To point out that person because that's the exact point I'm
But
making.
even though it's fair, there's a chance her family is making $200,000 a year, which is great. Puts them maybe more.
No, I'm using an exact example. They're
Even-
ungodly rich.
Even if they're in the millions,
Yeah.
they're still nowhere near the level of
Oh, no.
billionaires.
No.
Billionaires, to be honest, this is the revolutionary more in me. Any billionaire is a societal failure. Like, no one needs that much money. People
Yeah.
don't understand how much money that is. If your society allows a billionaire, it is failing on a basic level.
But here's my argument to counter against the left. I feel like we're at a point in time, and I've kind of touched on this. I think there's a lot of things where it's never enough. Like I saw that thing that came out like 2 weeks ago where, and I read the headline. I'm an idiot, but it was Bill Gates was complaining about taxes, and somebody was like, he's worth, let's say, $148 billion, and that person said he should give 147 of that billion away. And I was like, why don't you shut up? Like, where is he going to give that 147 billion? How about he give that 147 billion some Nazis?
I
would you be okay with that?
I would actually argue that a society should have never let him get 148 billion.
Yeah.
But
and it may be more than that, but you know
yeah,
my point.
but expecting a billionaire to get rid of it is foolish. You should have strong society that's like, why do you need this?
Yeah.
Like it's more helpful that we've taxed you. Also, how did you get this? Like, that's where we act as if. So
no. My bigger question is it real money or is it paper money?
And net worth.
Yeah.
But the real question is there any singular individual who does so much more work and is so much more worth an amount of money that they deserve that much more than everyone else? $1 billion or more, in these cases.
I'll take a tenth right now in cash.
Yeah, I would
non-taxed.
I would take 1% of it and be happy.
Yeah.
Probably for most of my life.
So what is the number that right now, if somebody was like, you could do this and not retire, not like UBI, but just like if you had this much money. See, that's where I feel like the UBI falls into place. We had this discussion with a few friends, like, what would make you feel less stress? How much money would that be?
So it goes up a little bit, but the happiness level seems to be on a single income about 70,000 right now. So if you were making around 70,000, I think it's single. It may be family, but I'm pretty sure it's single. 70,000.
It's got to be single.
70,000.
Because that's 35 a piece for
average.
family.
Yeah, average across that takes care of most of your health care currently. It takes care of like living. You can save. Like people who make more, they don't start to see happiness really being affected.
Okay, I thought that number was like 150,000
No,
or
I
something.
think it was 7. That may be family.
Okay, that may be family, but you know what I mean. Like, oh hell, if I made guaranteed $70,000 a year, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, exactly. But that's obviously an average. It's smaller if you're
Also,
in Knoxville, Tennessee.
70,000 a year
versus
in
New
Knoxville,
York.
Tennessee. You're
New
doing
York.
pretty good.
New York,
70,000 in New York,
You're
you're
rough.
screwed.
Or in San Francisco, you're dead.
Yeah.
But
Good luck living in that closet.
yeah. Yeah. And so like it's obviously an average across the board, but 70,000 in a place seems to be the average amount that they don't start to see.
I don't think
a mood
70,000 would
switch.
be enough for you.
You don't think so?
No, because you have to pay for your master's and doctorate.
Well, so actually, if I go through a doctorate, they should pay through it. But
you know what I mean. Like,
in the
whereas versus me, who's just working and has a mortgage, if somebody was like, how much would it cost to make you happy? Honestly, 70,000 would pay off the house, and I would be
what would you
giddy.
do? Yeah, you just bank it.
I would still work.
I mean, actually, so when I worked at AT&T, I probably made about 60 a year, and it was a lot of work, though it was a better schedule. Like I got to the point where when I was laid off, I didn't have a family. I had a lot of money, just saved up because they got to a point where once I bought everything, and I was renting, and it wasn't cheap. Like if
Oh, yeah.
if I had settled and bought a house and my mortgage is $500 to $600 a month, like I would have even more, because there was a point where
and then you could have resold.
yeah, I bought junk that like I needed and then I wanted, and then I got to the point where I was just
Needed.
like, well, so I meant like furniture.
I'm thinking I've seen pictures of all your pops. So
yeah, so I do
that's
have
more,
a lot. I do have an
That's more
extensive
want.
pop,
Yeah.
but that's not the needed.
Although
Like,
that could be investment because
That's
those could be
true. Some-
resold.
yeah, for ridiculous amounts. But
That's why I bought that Don Draper, is because I was like, there was some other pop that I was looking at. It's like, but I don't need to spend the $10. And then I looked at it later and it was like $67. Like, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot.
I could have bought a Magician's Apprentice Mickey for $6, and that thing goes for like $400 now.
I should look at selling my Ghostbusters pop when that movie comes out.
You should. That movie
Holy
actually didn't look too bad.
crap.
I'm worried about the kids, like it being heavily kid influenced, but it took it seriously. That's all I asked.
I
That
loved
was-
that it was Egon's grandkids.
Yeah. It
Oh
took
my
me a
God.
second. I was like, who's great? I was like, oh, Egon's dead. And they look like him. Like
Yeah.
they would be a good choice. They look like him. And if it's the secretary, if they had kids. And so I'm wondering if she's going to be the
She could be.
grandmother. Yeah.
So anyway, look back. So 70. I'm trying to think. So I think I owe like 61 left on this house. Like if I just had. So I can't believe you came up with the number 70, but it's like, oh yeah, 70. Well, I think at that point it probably wouldn't be 70. It'd probably be 100, because 100 would be enough to pay off my house, enough to pay off debt, to like taxes, credit card, to where I would, and that still feels bougie to me.
Yep.
Like it would take
But
100,000.
that's Knoxville, Tennessee. But-
No. I mean, me saying, well, it would take $100,000 to make me happy. Where there's a lot of people is like 20,000. I'm saying right now, if I had magically won $20,000 tomorrow, I would be over the damn moon. But I'm also smart enough to go, I would take $10,000, put it to the principal of the house, take chunks of the rest, and pay off debt, and then not have that money. Well, that's where taxes get.
I'd probably try to get a new car. Like that's the thing.
No, I told you. I told Jason, I was like, I have very minimal goals. I was like, what seems like a fancy goal for me that I would love to obtain in the next year? I would love to get my car repainted and all the dents and dings taken out of it. And he was like, that doesn't cost. I was like, but it's a crazy expense to me.
Oh yeah, like
I was
don't-
like, that's
don't
like
even want-
$1,000.
I want a used like 2015 Nissan Juke.
Yeah.
Like I would like a stick version, but I do.
Yeah.
That's like I don't even want a brand new car. I've always thought like a brand new car would make me ill because I know it's going to take some damage somewhere along the way, and that's just going to make me sick thinking about.
Although I did hear there's an actor or a comedian that said something brilliant, and it was like I think it was his dad, that when he had bought a new car, and the first thing he did before he even drove it off the lot, he took the key, he walked over to the back wheel well, and on the inside scraped. And the kid was like, "Why did you do that?" He was like, "Now it's not perfect.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry anymore.
Yeah.
It's no longer perfect. I know that's there." I was like, "That is actually pretty genius."
Yeah, cars are a money pit. They're great because you need them, but you're just always throwing money
Okay,
into
we're
them.
going to go down a little rambling path. We are going to end soon because it is 8:11. We are 4 hours and 22 minutes in. I'm starving. I have to pee, and but we're going to go down to, but you're not much of a car guy.
No,
So here's the funny part,
though I work on them.
huh?
Though I work on them.
The funny part is I have all these friends that are like, man, if I got rich, I would buy a brand new Tesla. I was like, no, I wouldn't. I'd buy a 68 Lincoln Continental with suicide doors, and I would rebuild it myself. That's what I would spend money on. That little Yaris, I don't need a car to define me.
I want a car that has some Bluetooth capabilities, a nice little, and a backup camera.
See, I want
Yeah.
old cars. Like I want like an old Ford, like a '64 Bronco.
As someone who works on cars, the amount of work I constantly am like putting in, and that I know that are going into one of those, it's just.
No.
Also, I use a car to get me from A to B, and
That's
I want
what the
one
Yaris
that's-
is for.
And I just want it to just. I don't.
So,
need a
but
car.
here's the difference: '68 Lincoln Continental suicide doors, 1960s Ford Bronco or Toyota Land Cruiser, an old '70s Toyota Land
I love the
Cruiser.
look of them.
An old pickup truck, doesn't matter, something from the '60s, early '70s, maybe even one of those boats from the early '80s. You know what's good about all those? Two things: don't have computers, easy to fix. You can go and buy parts at AutoZone right now.
It's true.
It's not International Scout, so you can go and buy parts. So
One car. If I was, see, that's a problem. I say if I was obscenely wealthy, but there are. I was having this conversation about spending money, and like as I like comic books, buying like. Why would you buy a $20,000 comic book so you can put it in a vault and go look at it once a year?
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't do it. Like
No.
no matter how rich I am, I was like, that's a car. I had house down payment.
Mark Maron brought that up very early on about like a record player when he got into record players. So this is probably like 100 episodes in.
Yeah.
So he was like, I keep looking at record players and I found amps and speakers, and it's like $40,000-$50,000. He's like, all I would have in my brain is, this doesn't sound like 40 or 50,000. So I made that joke with like cigars. Like I know all these people that are like, oh, this is the number one rated cigar from 3 years ago, and this cigar cost me $50. I'm like, all I'd be thinking is, does it taste like $50?
I think about that in steaks. Like,
Don't get me started on steaks.
like
David Gailey and I have said for years, like, it's hard to buy a steak out because I know how to cook it myself and I know how I like it.
Yeah.
And we cannot talk about food because I'm dying. So we're going to end on this.
Okay.
Did you have another point you wanted to make?
Since I mentioned them but never said them, Some More News YouTube channel, great. Philosophy Tube, ContraPoints, and Innuendo Studios.
Oh, all these are they unbiased news sources?
No, but they are usually response news sources.
Okay.
They are YouTube. Some More News. That most of them leave kind of left. Philosophy Tube has leftist videos, but he's also trying to just teach basic philosophy to people. I think that's important. ContraPoints has a good, interesting spin on a lot of her things. They're definitely left, but they don't present videos like, here is like what we should do. It's usually, if they're being left, it's let's respond why this person is wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the left response, and here's what the information says.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm going to give him one last shout out before I ask you the final question. Larry Wilmore, the reason I love him is he is not right nor left. He, as he used to say on the show, he's keeping it 100. Like he was like, him and Bill Simmons had a great episode about the Democratic group, and he was like, Kamala never had a story.
No.
And he was like, and he went through like almost every single candidate, and here's all their problems. And they actually brought up a point. They were like, Kamala for AG. And I was like, holy crap, I can get behind that. Although she scares me on how rough she'd be on drugs.
Yep.
Like, but Larry Wilmore's podcast is one of the best damn ones out there right now.
Tulsi Gabbard is an occult, just so everyone knows.
I did listen to that, and I sent it to Sean, Jason, and Dale. And that podcast was fascinating.
What worst year ever. It's actually some of the group that does Some More News. And Behind the Bastards is actually an interesting podcast if you want the history.
That. You told me there's one episode, but
That's
then I found
really
like 3 or 4.
Yeah, that are just interesting if you like the history, and people who are assholes that you don't know about, like what made them. Like, here's Hitler's favorite author. Like, that's an interesting.
Okay, so here you go. Here's the final. Do you want to make a prediction right now?
Okay.
Do you want to make a prediction?
For
November 2020.
It's hard because I don't know who they're going to run. If they run Joe Biden, Donald Trump. If they run Elizabeth Warren, it'll be close. I worry it'll be Donald Trump. I like Warren mostly. She's got some issues I have, but I like her mostly. If they run Bernie would be an interesting one. I do like Bernie, and I do think he could maybe inspire people, but I worry there would be enough moneyed interest that they don't like him and would fight against him. Donald Trump is not out.
Buttigieg? You're not even putting Buttigieg?
No, because he's not going to be worth worrying about.
Okay. A lot of people said that about Obama in 2007.
Yeah, well, Buttigieg is not the candidate Obama was, and he has a lot of problems. That Buttigieg has had left people vote for him to win than certain people had as a whole, just because his town was smaller.
Yang?
He's not going to be
so
up there.
You remember how I said many, many times that there's all those people running, there's a ton of great VP nominees, no great presidential nominees. I've revised that statement. Out of all of them, there's good VP nod, and you can fill out a cabinet with all those people running, except for Marianne Williamson, except for some of them. Because you think of like Corey as HUD,
Yeah.
because he's so community involved. I don't want to assign
that would
race
be
to
great.
something.
I
I think he understands poverty in a way that a lot of people don't. Kamala is AG, Andrew Yang is financial. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's...
So I think in Bernie's case, Bernie would be interesting because what Bernie speaks to is the same thing Trump spoke to,
Yeah.
in that there is this like outsider, people are tired of politics.
Oh, I forgot two other people, but keep going.
But I don't know what the
I don't
push
think,
against him.
I think the
would
problem
be.
with him and Warren is we're not going to be able to pay for all the things that they want to do.
But
the funny part about that is they're politicians.
Yeah.
You're just not going to pass everything.
yeah, and so I would rather people be talking about it to get
Yeah.
it in the public discourse, knowing that it's not a guarantee. But because most presidents need to pick one, maybe two major legislations. Bernie would probably not do UBI at this point, but he would
No.
do universal health care.
Yeah.
And he would do
Free college.
Yeah, I think. And hopefully, I think both of those would push lower millennials and Zoomers into one, going to vote for him and actually getting them engaged.
So, Bloomberg.
I have
that
problems
sigh.
with multi-billionaires buying them, trying to buy their way into
And
their
there's one
political
last one.
candidacy.
Clinton.
Look, Bill Maher pisses me off a lot, but when he said go into the woods and shut up about her, he's absolutely right. Just go away. Like,
So, I think the biggest problem with the left is they're eating their own. Like Bernie called out Bloomberg for spending like $40 million.
but
He's
that's Bernie's message. He should call that out because that's on point.
but
Like-
that's giving fodder to the right of like, it's all chaos and disaster. The only thing I'll go in positive of that is it was all chaos and disaster when Trump and all those 14 other people were running. too.
That's true. Bernie, to stay on message, he should call that out. That money in politics is a problem, and he can look back if he gets it or he's out there when Bloomberg, he can, as he tends to do, is keep him on task. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't put that money in there. That is bad and it hurts us, which I think is I hope it's what people want to hear. Like, because that's true. That money in politics, Citizens United was probably the most devastating thing that's happened to this country in the last 30 years. And
I still think there should be a governor on how much money you can spend on political campaigns.
yeah, and we probably shouldn't run for a year and a half.
No.
Like,
I think there should be a limit on dates.
Yeah.
Like,
and-
it's crazy how long the Democrats have been running.
I know.
Like, it's like the Republicans, it was like almost a year.
Yeah,
But man, this Democrats, it's been going since like the spring.
yeah,
It'll be a full year and a half by the end.
yeah.
So I'll give you one other thing to end on. I'm going to see if I can talk to her about this. I think there's a certain someone here in town that needs to run for. If she doesn't run for governor, I think she should run for the House or Congress or House or Senate. And I'm bleary. I may be saying that. I always just say Congress because it covers both.
That's true.
Yeah.
Senators are a little more prestigious.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? I always just say Congress because I'm like, that covers both. And I went to bed at 4 a.m. and woke up at 9:30 and am starving and got to pee. Madeline O'Hara.
I was like, do you want to kill your other uncle? he dislikes her so much for no reason.
I'm going to use a very offensive term. So one of our uncles, air quotes, that you can probably figure out who would be maybe you wouldn't have blustery enough to say this, that when Eddie Manis was running, he was like, I don't know that I want a cock smoker in the office. And it's like, holy shit. I don't know what to do with you because you're too far gone.
Yeah, it's I got it. Woo!
But he said that, and I was like, I don't want to be the knee-jerk liberal and go, that's offensive on many levels. I just want to go, you're an idiot.
But
You're an idiot. Like,
so-
I always say, if you don't like gay people, you've never met a gay person. Because
Yeah.
you're,
well, I met one the other night that was not very nice. But
hey, there's going to be one.
but he
So
got
anyway, so
very
it's going to
drunk.
kill our uncle.
Oh yeah, he for some reason I'm fine with Madeline, and I think she would make a good governor and a good senator. I don't know how much she would do in the House, but
But you know what I mean? She needs to run. Now, Renee Hoyos is running against Burchett for next fall. And I need to hit her up again. I hit her up last time when she ran. I think she ran for state senate. Because I had met her at an event, and she had given me a business card, and I hit her up. I was like, if you need help with social media and marketing, I'm happy to help you with that. And she never got back to me. She added me on Facebook as a the social media crap you don't have to deal with. Added me on Facebook. I sent her that message. She never responded. I will go,
okay.
I'm literally trying to help you. And this is, I've done political campaigns when I was at the print shop. I know what, I've dealt with Dad. I know what the hell I'm doing. I know how you should go against Burchett. But I'm going to hit her up again. I was like, again, I'm going to offer this.
Do you think Madeline would run? Like, do you think she is tired?
She has grandbabies. I think the grandbabies are getting to a certain age to where they're not little bitty. I think she would run for.
Sounds
I
like
think Renee Hoyos got out in front
Mhm.
because she was afraid Madeline would run for that seat.
Ah.
I think if Madeline ran against Burchett, she would demolish him. I think he's great at glad handing and meeting people in the county, but I think everyone in the city, like it would be, I don't want to say it'd be a landslide, but it would be a crazy like blue with a donut of red.
Yeah, that sounds
like-
about right.
I think Madeline would massacre Burchett
Well, you've got
in the.
the reason. So
But governor, I think governor would be too hard
Mhm.
because I think Nashville looks down upon Knoxville, and I think people in Chattanooga almost have a, loggerheads with Knoxville on which one's better.
Mhm.
But I think Haslam would actually come out and support Madeline.
you think so?
Yes.
That'd be interesting.
Because he came out and supported her when she was running for mayor.
Hmm.
No, she worked for him. They actually like one another.
Yeah.
And Haslam is not as bad a guy.
No. I always say everyone I know that knows Haslam.
He was a really good mayor.
Yeah.
He has not been a great governor, but he
But-
was a really
but
good mayor.
the type of Republican that he is
He's a
very-
figurehead. He's a
yeah,
face.
He's just always been very. If all Republicans were Bill Haslam, I could stomach the party a lot,
Yeah.
a lot better. That's how I usually describe him.
I honestly think that there was a point where he was going to be a VP nomination. And if what had happened to his brother had not happened, if what had happened to his brother had not happened, he probably would have been he may have actually been in Paul Ryan's place.
And that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Although he would have been a newer governor at that point, I would say if what had not happened with his brother and the FBI raid and all that stuff, and it had not been Trump, if it had been somebody more regular, I think he would have been a VP nominee in 2016.
he would have been a pretty good choice.
Yeah.
Because he has that VP-ness
Oh, yeah.
about him. As far as Madeline, to your uncle tells himself stories to dislike her for no reason, as he does with a lot of things that are out of her control.
I hope he doesn't hear this.
He won't.
Well, there's a lot of like I love some of my friends, but some of the stuff she's done they hate. And I'm like, okay, I see your point. Like, but also don't blame her. Like, you also need to blame city council because city council approved this.
More than like usually
Yeah.
a mayor has.
I was like, and also there's something in particular that I will not talk about. I'll talk about off mic, but I won't talk about on mic. That they're like, that's terrible and it doesn't work and it's a waste of money and yada, yada, yada. And I look at it and I go, that was done for beautification. I guarantee you somebody in Parks Department are the ones that said, hey, we want to do this. And she looked at it and she's like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And then it got approved through city council, but she's the figurehead. So she's the one. And it's like, that was probably actually started on a different floor.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
That's how politics works. And bringing it back to poli-sci, that's actual politics and how it functions.
Yeah.
It's not left and right. It's how it functions.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.